The Human Realm. The Human Realm, by Liu Jiming, translated by Chen. Part 2 continued. Chapter 19. Before our father's generation of intellectuals, isn't our generation too selfish and narrow-minded? After finishing her graduate class, Murong Chu had just walked out of the classroom when her phone rang. Looking at the number, it was her father calling. Usually, unless something major happened, Father and Auntie Ju rarely took the initiative to call her. Could Father's condition have worsened? A trace of unease passed through Murong Chu's heart. She pressed the answer button. Auntie Ju's voice came through. "Lulu's mom, your dad asked me to ask if you could come over these next couple days." Before Auntie Ju finished, Murong Chu asked anxiously, "Is it my dad's health?" She swallowed the rest of her words. "Your dad's health is fine right now," Auntie Ju said haltingly on the phone. "Your dad said he misses you." Murong Chu wanted to ask more, but before she could speak, Auntie Ju had hung up. It wasn't yet noon. Murong Chu hurriedly walked out of the teaching building, hailed an empty taxi returning after dropping off passengers on campus, and headed straight for Hangkou. When Murong Chu pushed open her father's door, Auntie Ju had already prepared lunch. Several dishes sat on the dining table, including Murong Chu's favorite stir-fried artemisia with pork. This was obviously something Auntie Ju had specially made for her. "Where's Dad? What's so urgent?" As soon as the words left her mouth, she saw Father walking out of the study, saying, "QQ, can't you come see me and your Auntie Ju even when there's nothing wrong?" Though his tone was reproachful, Father's face showed no blame. Instead, it carried a faint smile. Murong Chu noticed Father's complexion looked quite good, much better than the last time she'd seen him in that weakened state. Although his steps were still somewhat unsteady when walking, he didn't use a cane and had emerged from the study. This meant Father could read and write as before, resuming normal life. For Murong Chu, nothing could make her happier. She stepped forward wanting to help Father, but he pushed away her extended arm, walking step by step to the dining table and sitting down steadily. Auntie Ju had already served the rice, placing a bowl of winter melon and pork rib soup before Father and daughter. Seeing Auntie Ju so busy her forehead was beaded with sweat, Murong Chu felt somewhat apologetic. "Auntie Ju, you eat too!" Auntie Ju responded with an "I" and sat down between Father and daughter. "Dad's complexion really looks good," Murong Chu said while eating. "Your dad's health. Cold weather doesn't suit him. Hot weather doesn't suit him either. Right now the temperature is just right," Auntie Ju chimed in. "Recently, every morning I accompany him for a walk. Just before you arrived, we'd just returned from the park." "You've really worked hard, Auntie Ju," Murong Chu said sincerely, turning her gaze toward Father across from her. She vaguely felt that although Father's health was good, he seemed somewhat melancholic. Her intuition told her Father's sudden summons wasn't just because he missed her. There must be something else. "Dad, why did you suddenly call me back? What is it really about?" Murong Chu put down her chopsticks, unable to contain herself. Murong Yuntian looked at his daughter for a full half-minute before lowering his eyelids and asking, "QQ, do you still remember Yangtze Electromechanical Factory?" "Yangtze Electromechanical Factory," Murong Chu repeated these words. "Of course I remember. You were sent down to that factory years ago and worked as an engineer for 2 years. "Not an engineer, a technician," Murong Yuntian corrected. "At that time, I was a blacklisted specialist sent down for reform. How could I be qualified to be an engineer?" "But the small generator sets you invented for them brought electricity to remote mountain villages, bringing light to poor and lower-middle peasants." "Heh, you still remember those phrases the newspapers used back then." A smile appeared on Murong Yuntian's face, murmuring, "That wasn't my achievement alone. It was invented together with the factory's old, middle-aged, and young technical innovation team. Back then, Yangtze Electromechanical Factory's products were truly famous throughout the North and South. Some years ago, I read in the paper that Yangtze Electromechanical Factory had been restructured and incorporated into Xinghan Group." Just as Murong Chu reached this point, she noticed Father's face suddenly darkened. For quite a while he didn't speak. She suddenly wondered, could father's summons be related to Yangtze Electromechanical Factory? Sure enough, father put down his chopsticks, stood up, and walked toward the study. Auntie Ju called out, "Hey, you haven't finished your meal!" But father, as if he hadn't heard, walked into the study without looking back. Murong Chu was momentarily stunned, then stood up and followed father into the study. "Take a look at this." Murong Yuntian pushed an A4 printed page toward his daughter. "Workers from Yangtze Electromechanical Factory delivered this to me yesterday. The leader was named Chen Guang." "Chen Guang?" Murong Chu uttered the name in surprise, hastily unfolding the A4 sheet. The large characters "Appeal" leaped into her eyes. "We are workers of Yangtze Electromechanical Factory." Most of us entered the factory at 15, 16, 17, or 18 years old. Yangtze Electromechanical Factory's products once brought light to our motherland's mountains, rivers, villages, and settlements, providing crucial energy support for our country's socialist construction. Yangtze Electromechanical Factory's development synchronized with the Republic's. Our youth and growth synchronized with Yangtze Electromechanical Factory's development. Our lives have merged with Yangtze Electromechanical Factory. The factory's fate is our fate. Therefore, after learning that Yangtze Electromechanical Factory is about to be acquired by the American Duke Company, we realized a crucial moment has arrived. What we want to protect isn't just our rice bowls, but that glorious history Yangtze Electromechanical Factory traveled together with the Republic and the dignity of the working class. We are not the nation's burden. We are not only the masters according to this nation's constitution, but also the masters of Yangtze Electromechanical Factory. Without the master's authorization, no organization or department has the right to sell Yangtze Electromechanical Factory. Hereby, we solemnly appeal to you all, leaders, experts, and fellow workers and comrades who once lived and worked at Yangtze Electromechanical Factory. Please reflect our voices to higher departments and society at large through various means, echoing our demands. After the appeal were rows of densely packed signatures and fingerprints. In the last line, Murong Chu saw Chen Guang's name along with a contact address. "Do you know this, Chen Guang?" Murong Chu asked father. "When I was sent down to the electromechanical factory, Chen Guang was a young worker who'd just been recruited. I happened to be in his work group." Murong Yuntian spoke in a reminiscent tone. The young man not only worked hard but also loved studying. Whenever he had time, he'd research techniques. His only weakness was inadequate cultural foundation. "He was my classmate at Yangtze Commission-affiliated middle school," Murong Chu said. "Chen Guang is also old now. When he came yesterday to deliver this appeal, I almost didn't recognize him." "Do you think Yangtze Electromechanical Factory's survival or demise matters?" Murong Chu asked, hesitatingly. "Yangtze Electromechanical Factory made special contributions to our country's water conservancy and electric power construction. How can I bear to watch it just disappear?" Murong Yuntian seemed to be asking Murong Chu while also asking himself. "But back then, you were sent down to Yangtze Electromechanical Factory as a blacklisted specialist," Murong Chu couldn't help saying. "For you, that was also an unbearable memory." "QQ, how can you look at things this way?" Murong Yuntian looked at his daughter with surprise, his expression so serious. When Murong Chu had done something wrong as a child, father wore exactly this expression. Can the small grievance an individual suffers be mentioned in the same breath as the nation's interests? Besides, during those years at Yangtze Electromechanical Factory, getting along with the worker masters, I also learned much from them. Seeing father's angry expression, Murong Chu's face reddened. This deeply rooted patriotic sentiment in father left her speechless. Father had quietly dedicated his whole life to the nation. Even after suffering endless grievances, he never complained. Yet many among us, for the little bit of hardship experienced in our youth, have spent half our lives in accusation and resentment. Some people are even full of hostility toward this nation. Before our father's generation of intellectuals, Isn't our generation too selfish and narrow-minded? Murong-Chu thought. For many years, she had carefully kept her distance from certain powerful mainstream values, but now she felt deep down she too was a follower of trends. Perhaps I'm not much nobler than those who navigate the currents like fish in water, Murong-Chu thought. Compared to father, she actually had no capital for aloofness whatsoever. Murong-Chu picked up that A4 sheet and asked tentatively, "This appeal, what do you plan to do with it?"
"Besides adding my own name, what else can I do?"
Murong Yuntian murmured.
"But I've been retired so many years. Who still values my opinion?"
As he said this, Murong Yuntian sat in the old rattan chair by the desk. His two bony hands gripped the armrests, appearing so weak and powerless. At that moment, Murong-Chu felt father truly resembled an isolated, helpless child. She thought, perhaps I should do something, not just for father. After lunch, Murong-Chu left father's house, the appeal covered with signatures and fingerprints in her handbag. Shenzhen Road, number 239. Seeing this address, Murong-Chu felt it looked familiar. When studying at Yangtze Commission-affiliated middle school years ago, she had once gone with classmates to Chen Guang's home. It was a small alley not far from Hangkou railway station. The alley was very narrow, both sides lined with simple houses, crooked and chaotic like poorly built blocks. The walls were thin. When trains passed, they made thunderous rumbling sounds. The entire house would tremble, as if about to collapse. That day, Murong-Chu and her classmates had difficulty finding Chen Guang's home. Chen Guang had gone to the railway station to collect coal scraps. Only his sick mother was home. Murong-Chu and the classmates waited a long time without seeing him return, so they went to the station to find Chen Guang. Beside the railway station was an open-air coal yard. Coal scraps piled up like mountains. The air was thick with intense coal ash smell. Murong-Chu and classmates found Chen Guang on the railway tracks near the coal yard. Except for his two eyes, Chen Guang was covered from head to toe in coal ash, looking like a monkey. When Murong-Chu placed in Chen Guang's hands a stack of wrinkled renminbi donated by the entire class, this usually taciturn classmate's eyes immediately reddened. On the way to Chen Guang's home, fragments of memories floated through Murong-Chu's mind from time to time. Over 30 years had passed. She hadn't expected Chen Guang still lived in that dilapidated alley. When Murong-Chu got out of the taxi, she immediately saw the blue and white street sign, Chezhan Road. Though the alley was still that alley, it had completely changed. The biggest change, of course, was that Hangkou railway station had relocated to Qingnian Road. The current Chezhan Road had only the name. Standing in the alley, you could no longer hear trains' deafening roar or smell that pungent coal ash. Compared to the past, the street had added many dazzling shops, nothing more than hair salons, supermarkets, bars, internet cafes, and restaurants. The neon signboards at shop entrances were more glaring than the next. Like fig leaves, they stuck to both sides of the street, blocking those drab, uneven residential buildings. But what couldn't be blocked was the stench of swill and garbage from sewers, and that inescapable dusty air. When Murong-Chu found the address Chen Guang had left on the appeal, she discovered Chezhan Road number 239 wasn't a residence but a 7-story building facing the street. Several such buildings stood along the street, all red brick structures. At a glance, their rough, solid, square style revealed them as buildings from 3 or 4 decades ago. In the 1960s and 70s, this city had seen many similar structures, most grandly named Residents' New Village or Workers' New Village. Those moving in were mostly state-owned factory workers. At that time, being allocated such housing would attract countless envious gazes. Now, compared to magnificent, imposing commercial residential buildings, these buildings, clumsy from design to construction, appeared so shabby and ugly, a pathetically out-of-place sight. At the first-floor reception room, Murong-Chu inquired and learned Chen Guang's family lived in Unit 2, Room 703. When she climbed step by step to the 7th floor, she broke out in a layer of sweat. Since moving into an elevator-equipped residential building, she hadn't climbed such a high floor in a long time. Standing at the simple hallway entrance piled with miscellaneous items, Murong Chu caught her breath before knocking on the door. After just 2 knocks, the door opened. But it wasn't Chen Guang himself, rather a haggard-looking middle-aged woman. When Murong Chu explained she was looking for Chen Guang, the woman's face showed obvious impatience. "You people have been looking for him several times already. When will this end?" Murong Chu realized she had mistaken her identity and introduced herself. "I'm Chen Guang's junior high classmate." The woman was startled, then said apologetically, "I thought you were someone from Xinghan Group or the neighborhood committee. These past days they keep coming to find old Chen." "Why are they looking for Chen Guang?" "To persuade him not to make trouble at the factory anymore," the woman grumbled. "The key is old Chen absolutely doesn't admit he's making trouble." "When will Chen Guang be back?" "I don't know either. He went out early this morning. The factory stopped work long ago, but he's busier than when he was working. Don't know what he's busy with all day." The woman's gaze lingered on Murong Chu for a moment before asking, "You're old Chen's classmate? Not long ago he attended a class reunion. Among those classmates, our old Chen is the least accomplished one, right? Rare that you still think of him. Come in quickly." She stepped aside from the door she'd been blocking. This was a 2-bedroom apartment. Like most housing built in the 60s and 70s, the living room was so small it could barely fit a table and simple sofa set. Rather than calling it a living room, it was more like a corridor. The lime walls and cement floor had long since peeled, exposing patches of bare brick and stone. The furniture was also from the 60s and 70s. Much of the paint had completely fallen off, appearing dilapidated. In the living room sat a 16-inch Beijing brand television covered with a white embroidered cloth. This TV was old Chen's prize when the factory named him a model worker over 10 years ago. He still treats it like a treasure. Seeing Murong Chu's gaze fall on the television, the woman said, "Our son wanted to use his own salary to buy a bigger one, but he wouldn't let him." "You two have just one child?" Murong Chu asked casually. After high school graduation, our son couldn't find work for years. Only after I took medical retirement 2 years ago could he take my place." "What kind of work?" "Sanitation worker." At first, our son absolutely didn't want to go. He wanted to wait until his dad retired to become a worker at Yangtze Electromechanical Factory. At least that sounds better than sweeping streets. As the woman spoke, she rolled up her sleeve and wiped her eyes. But who knew the electromechanical factory would stop working just like that? Old Chen himself lost his position. Hearing this, Murong Chu felt uncomfortable too. As if to evade something, she turned her gaze to the glass frames on the wall. She immediately noticed that large color photograph, the recent group photo from the Yangtze Commission-affiliated middle school class of 67's 35th anniversary reunion. Besides this color photo in the frame, all others were black and white. In the photos, Chen Guang always wore a safety helmet and work clothes, the background either the workshop or Yangtze Electromechanical Factory gate. One photo showed young, robust Chen Guang in a sports jersey with Yangtze Electromechanical Factory written on it, hands holding a basketball, face beaming with proud smile. Behind him was the sports field panorama. You could vaguely see a banner reading, "Warmly celebrate the complete success of the city's 8th Workers' Games." Chen Guang had loved playing basketball at Yangtze Commission-affiliated middle school, an excellent center, nearly selected for the provincial basketball team. Murong Chu discovered almost all of Chen Guang's photos were taken when he worked as a Yangtze Electromechanical Factory worker. The only childhood photo was the Yangtze Commission-affiliated middle school graduation picture. In this photo, Murong Chu not only found herself, but also saw Pan Xiaoping and Mo Xiaohuai. Chen Guang was tallest. Even standing at the very back, he gave a sense of standing out from the crowd. Before the two had exchanged many words, Chen Guang returned. Before entering, he called out,
"Wife, get me something to eat quick. I'm starving."
"You're busy all day? Still no one treating you to meals? Though Chen Guang's wife spoke sarcastically, her face wore a smile. Look who's here! Only then did Chen Guang see Murong Chu. He was very surprised. Murong, it's you. Still standing there dazed? Greet the guest, Chen Guang's wife said, heading to the kitchen to cook for Chen Guang. Chen Guang came to his senses, picking up dirty clothes from the sofa while inviting Murong Chu to sit, going to make her tea, appearing somewhat flustered. Compared to their meeting at Mulan Lake, Chen Guang seemed considerably aged. The wrinkles on his forehead were like knife cuts, deep and dense. His whole person appeared somewhat exhausted, disheveled, as if he hadn't slept well for days. Chen Guang, I saw the appeal you delivered to my father. Murong Chu got straight to the point. Murong, I only learned yesterday that Engineer Mu was your father, Chen Guang said guiltily. Engineer Mu is so old and his health isn't good. We still went to bother him. Really embarrassing. Murong Chu knew Chen Guang had misunderstood her intentions. I'm certainly not here to hold you accountable. My father is very concerned about your factory's situation. He asked me to find you to understand the specific circumstances, see if we can help you. Really? When I handed the appeal to Engineer Mu yesterday, I said just a few words before leaving. My heart kept pounding afterward. Didn't know what Engineer Mu's attitude was. Chen Guang was so happy he became incoherent, continuously rubbing his hands. So Engineer Mu hasn't forgotten our factory. The acquisition of Yangtze Electromechanical Factory. What stage has it reached now? This morning, people from Duke Company came to inspect the factory. We blocked them at the factory gate. This afternoon, the group held a meeting to negotiate. Don't know what the result was. What role is our old classmate playing in this matter? You mean Manager Pan Xiaoping? Chen Guang furrowed his brow. She's the restructuring leadership team leader. This morning, she personally accompanied the Duke Company people to the factory. Who from Duke Company is it? Murong Chu pressed further. Who recognizes people from American companies? Anyway, from a distance, well-dressed, a fake foreign devil. Murong Chu said nothing more. As a university professor, perhaps the only thing she could do was appeal to intellectuals to pay attention to this acquisition case of Yangtze Electromechanical Factory and issue appeals and suggestions to relevant departments. She pondered who she should ask to sign the appeal. Just then, Murong Chu received a call from Pan Xiaoping. Murong, there's a dinner tonight. The guests attending include Provincial People's Congress Vice Director Han Ping, Vice Governor Lu Daqiang, and also Gu Chaoyang. Chaoyang is the nominal host. He asked me to invite you no matter what. Murong, you won't refuse to give me face, will you? Hearing Pan Xiaoping's voice on the phone, Murong Chu's heart was conflicted. Normally, she would unhesitatingly refuse such official and business social gatherings. But today... Chapter 20. The current Gu Chaoyang, like those rising bourgeoisie in Balzac's writing, his entire being exuded an ambitious yet extremely shrewd air. Murong Chu ultimately didn't attend Pan Xiaoping's dinner, but she arranged to meet Gu Chaoyang at a tea house called Water Blue County. Water Blue County was located on Huangli Road, less than 2 stops from East Lake Guest House. Both the Provincial Academy of Social Sciences and Social Sciences Federation dormitories were on this street. Murong Chu often came to the Academy of Social Sciences for meetings and was quite familiar with this quiet street. Of course, another reason she hadn't followed Gu Chaoyang's suggestion to meet at the coffee shop inside East Lake Guest House was that their wedding had been held at East Lake Guest House years ago. She didn't want to be reminded of the past and make both of them uncomfortable. The appointed time was 8:30 p.m. When Gu Chaoyang walked briskly into Water Blue County, Murong Chu had already arrived. This surprised him greatly. In Gu Chaoyang's memory, Murong Chu always arrived late for dates. After marriage, Murong Chu had revealed the true reason for her tardiness, to kill off that deep-rooted sense of superiority in his mind. Who would have thought that many years after their divorce, Murong Chu would not only proactively invite him but also, for the first time ever, arrive ahead of him. The tea house was decorated in an antique, very elegant style. There were few customers. The lighting was dim, playing soothing, subdued light music, making one feel as if in a dream. Gu Chaoyang removed his coat and had just sat down in an antique circular chair opposite Murong Chu when a waitress in a kipao walked over. "Sir, what would you like to drink?" Gu Chaoyang took the menu the waitress handed him and glanced at it. Before he could speak, Murong Chu ordered an Tieguanyin tea for him. Drinking green tea after alcohol sobers you up and nourishes the stomach. Gu Chaoyang had actually wanted to order coffee. Living abroad for so long, drinking coffee had become a habit. But Murong Chu's words stirred something in his heart. "I didn't expect you'd also start paying attention to health preservation. You never cared about such mundane matters before." Hearing her ex-husband's not entirely teasing tone, Murong Chu didn't mind. In the dim light, she couldn't see Gu Chaoyang's face clearly, but she knew what the other party was thinking. If it were before, with her temperament, the two would likely have engaged in a verbal sparring match. But today, she had proactively invited Gu Chaoyang because she bore a special mission. She didn't want to make the scene too awkward from the start. "You and Pan Xiaoping are quite intimate. She's even paying for your hosting," Murong Chu joked. "You two must be doing some big business together. Can you reveal a bit?"
What? Are you jealous? Gu Chaoyang also said half seriously, even ostentatiously crossing his legs. "Pan Xiaoping is your close girlfriend."
"All right, stop the act. I know you've long had a family in America, a young, beautiful wife plus more than one lover. How could you fancy Pan Xiaoping?" Murong Chu poked at him bluntly. "She's so attentive to you. She must be asking something of you." "Not really asking something of me. She and I are both business people. Still the same old saying, in business, talk business," Gu Chaoyang said with a half smile. "Just like you inviting me here today. It's not just to accompany me drinking tea and reminiscing, right?" Seeing Gu Chaoyang had already broached the subject, Murong Chu stopped beating around the bush. She took out that appeal from her handbag, placed it on the tea table, and pushed it toward Gu Chaoyang. "Take a look at this first." Gu Chaoyang skimmed the paper and understood everything. He pushed the appeal back to Murong Chu unchanged. "Murong, may I understand this as you asking something of me?"
"If you understand it that way, I don't object."
Murong Chu answered neither humbly nor arrogantly. Just then, the waitress brought over the Tieguanyin. The tea was too hot. Gu Chaoyang picked up the cup, then set it down. His facial expression also became serious. "Murong, I really do want to help you with this. For me, this is an opportunity. You know, we lived together for so long. You've never asked anything of me." What Gu Chaoyang said was indeed true. It sounded very moving. A moment of confusion appeared in Murong Chu's mind, but she immediately became clear-headed. Now wasn't the time for her and her ex-husband to reminisce. "Strictly speaking, it's not me personally asking something of you, but those workers about to lose their factory. I know this. The moment I saw that appeal, I knew your intention in not attending the banquet but inviting me here alone." Gu Chaoyang shrugged. "Using words Chinese people often say, you're pleading for the people, standing with the laboring masses, speaking for them, even willing to shed blood and sacrifice. This is the intellectual tradition." "What exactly are you trying to say?" Murong Chu couldn't help interrupting him. "What I actually want to say is that phrase all Chinese people know. Ideals are skeletal, reality is cruel. Take the Yangtze electromechanical factory acquisition case. Now, it's not that Duke Company must acquire it, but Xinghan Group begging us to buy it." Gu Chaoyang revealed the secret in one sentence. "Honestly, I also sympathize with those protesting workers, but Xinghan Group has already regarded Yangtze electromechanical factory as their burden. Even if it's not Duke Company, they'll be acquired by another company. The one determining the workers' fate isn't me. In other words, the anxious one now isn't me but Pan Xiaoping and those in Xinghan Group's management. You understand this reasoning, right?" Gu Chaoyang's words made Murong Chu feel as if she'd walked into a fog. For a moment, she couldn't sort out the logic and chain of interests, but she knew Gu Chaoyang hadn't deceived her. No matter what, Workers have the right to decide their own factory's fate. Her words sounded like pleading, also like defending. Gu Chaoyang was obviously touched by Murongchu's bookish expression. His gaze remained on his ex-wife's face for a full minute. He recalled just before coming here, when he and Pan Xiaoping hosted Han Peng, Lu Daqiang, and other high officials. Amid the toasts and drinks, all surface disputes resolved effortlessly. The so-called regulations and policies couldn't withstand interests. Regarding this underlying logic, Murongchu would never be able to understand. Ultimately, she was too naive. When sent down to the countryside years ago, it was like this. Now it was still like this. Gu Chaoyang thought with emotion. Decades had passed. She hadn't changed at all. From this perspective, perhaps she really had fallen behind. Gu Chaoyang picked up his cup and drank some tea, involuntarily recalling those years when he and Murongchu were sent down youth together in the countryside. Initially, the place where Gu Chaoyang was sent down bordered Shenhuangzhou, though before long, through his father's former subordinate, Heku Commune Party Committee Secretary Ding Changshui's connections, he was transferred to Heku Commune Middle School as a PE teacher. By the time he left Heku, barely a year had passed. But strangely, over all these years, occasionally recalling this brief sent-down youth experience, his deepest impression wasn't the village where he was sent down, nor Heku Middle School where he taught, but this village called Shenhuangzhou. This, of course, all related to Murongchu. Back then, didn't he come to Shenhuangzhou every time to find Murongchu? Even though the other party was always indifferent, he never got discouraged. In the long journey of pursuing Murongchu, the foolish old man spirit he displayed in persevering made many buddies find it incredible. In their view, with Gu Chaoyang's family background, finding a girlfriend more outstanding than Murongchu would be effortless. Yet Gu Chaoyang seemed possessed, chasing her all the way from Wuhan to Yanhe countryside without giving up. Actually, not only did buddies around him not understand, even Gu Chaoyang himself found it incredible. Gu Chaoyang's father Gu Feng and Murong Yuntian were old comrades in arms. Every year the two families would gather once, either Murong Yuntian crossing Wuchang to Gu Chaoyang's home, or Gu Feng crossing to Hankou to his home. Previously, every time Murong Yuntian came, he brought a tail, his daughter Murongchu. Back then Murongchu was still small, thin-framed, wearing a single ponytail, belonging to that unremarkable yellow-haired girl type. Each visit, she followed Uncle Murong closely, eyes wide open, looking timid. Growing up in Fruit Lake Provincial Committee living area, Gu Chaoyang was used to being casual and lazy, too lazy to bother with the yellow-haired girl. When father ordered him to play with guests, he reluctantly complied. When he took the yellow-haired girl to play at East Lake Guest House, he secretly put a rhinoceros beetle down her collar, scaring her into wailing and crying, running back to Gu Chaoyang's home, pulling Uncle Murong to go home. After that, Murongchu never came to Gu Chaoyang's home again. Everything perhaps started that sweltering summer, Gu Chaoyang later thought. That time, Gu Chaoyang, studying at Fruit Lake Middle School, followed father across the river to Hankou Uncle Murong's home for a visit. In that Soviet-style residence covered with evergreen ivy on Jifang Park Road, he and father received warm hospitality from Uncle Murong and Auntie. Adults always had endless topics. Left aside, bored Gu Chaoyang walked from the living room toward another room. That room's door was ajar. When he walked in, he saw a girl about his age sitting properly at the desk reading. Hearing the sound, her gaze moved from the book, turning over, her face full of surprise, looking at Gu Chaoyang. She stood up, slightly pouting, seeming angry at his bold intrusion. Gu Chaoyang was stunned for a moment before recognizing that this girl in a white dress, graceful and elegant with bright eyes and white teeth, was that yellow-haired girl from years ago. Murongchu obviously also recognized him. Her initial displeasure vanished. "Hello, Gu Chaoyang." She extended her hand generously. Gu Chaoyang noticed those hands were fair, slender, feeling very soft in his grasp. Gu Chaoyang saw Murongchu was reading The Song of Youth. Coincidentally, he'd just read it. They quickly exchanged thoughts about this novel. Within a few sentences, Gu Chaoyang realized he was no match for Murong Chu. Because he usually read novels swallowing dates whole, besides reading the story, especially romance-related plots, he rarely pondered deeper meanings. He changed the topic. I heard Liberation Park has a Soviet Army martyrs cemetery. I've never seen it. After listening, Murong Chu had no choice but to stop her interesting topic and agree to accompany him to stroll the park. The Soviet Army Martyrs Cemetery sat in a quiet pine grove inside the park. Like a guide, Murong Chu introduced Gu Chaoyang to stories about the cemetery. As he listened, his gaze occasionally swept across Murong Chu's beautiful face. It was morning then. Sunlight penetrated the dense pine forest. Dappled spots transmitted onto Murong Chu's body, making her appear as sacred as the goddess described in Soviet Russian novels. Let's sing a Soviet song together to express respect for the martyrs, Murong Chu proposed. Gu Chaoyang quickly agreed. Good. Later, they faced the martyrs' cemetery singing the Soviet song Katyusha. They stood shoulder to shoulder, very close to each other. Murong Chu's hair was blown by wind, floating onto Gu Chaoyang's face. At that moment, his heart tickled, producing a strange feeling. Damn, I'm probably falling in love with this yellow-haired girl, he thought. A notion suddenly popped into his mind. He would marry Murong Chu as his wife. Once this notion appeared, it clung to Gu Chaoyang like a curse, making him unable to stop. His prominent family background made him feel whatever he wanted, he would achieve. After that, he began launching fierce offensives toward Murong Chu, first secretly writing her letters, then directly matchmaking through father and Uncle Murong. The two old men were happy to see it succeed, but Murong Chu consistently ignored him. His letters sank like stones into the sea, always without news. Although Gu Chaoyang was still a middle school student, this wasn't his first romance. He'd once effortlessly won the class's prettiest girl. But now, facing Murong Chu, he encountered his first Waterloo. This middle school student, privately called Romance Prince by classmates, felt his self-esteem had suffered unprecedented blows. But he wasn't someone who easily admitted defeat. The more severe the setback, the stronger his desire to conquer. In this respect, Gu Chaoyang somewhat resembled his battle-tested general father. Upon high school graduation, when Gu Chaoyang heard Murong Chu had voluntarily signed up to go to Yanhe countryside as a sent-down youth, he unhesitatingly gave up the special military recruitment slot his father had secured for him, resolutely joining the up-to-the-mountains and down-to-the-countryside ranks. During those half-year-plus in Heikou, Gu Chaoyang went to Shenhuangzhou almost monthly. Every time seeing Murong Chu, she was either laboring in fields or attending study sessions. In just a few months, this originally fair-skinned city girl's face had tanned, her hands developing thick calluses. Gu Chaoyang's heart ached seeing this. He wanted to use father's connections to transfer Murong Chu to Heikou Middle School for work too. But when he'd just voiced this idea, Murong Chu refused. Chairman Mao said the countryside is a vast world where one can accomplish much. She was still full of enthusiasm as when she'd just come from Wuhan to Yanhe, mockingly asking, "You became a deserter yourself. Now you want to drag me down too?" Gu Chaoyang's good intentions were instead ridiculed. He thought, this yellow-haired girl must be possessed. Everyone else who came to the countryside to gild themselves for a few days tried every means to return to the city. Could she really want to be a peasant her whole life? If so, should I still marry her? For the first time, he wavered on that original notion. Before long, Gu Chaoyang heard Murong Chu had become Youth League branch committee member of Shenhuangzhou Brigade. To him, this obviously wasn't good news. He'd rather the yellow-haired girl take a tumble, give up early on this plan to temper red hearts in the vast world. But even worse news followed. Murong Chu had gotten together with a Youth League branch secretary at Shenhuangzhou Brigade named Ma Ke. This news came from a letter from Shenhuangzhou Brigade's sent-down youth. By then, he'd long since enlisted through father's connections. To monitor Murong Chu's movements at any time, before enlisting, he'd developed an informant among Shenhuangzhou's sent-down youth. Initially, he didn't dare believe this was true. In Gu Chaoyang's mind, besides himself, no one was worthy of Murongqiu, let alone a peasant. Like a treasure he'd been guarding being coveted, he burned with jealousy. The next day, he requested leave from troop leadership, took a long-distance bus to Shenhuangzhou. At the Brigade Elementary School playground, he intercepted Murongqiu, who was about to teach, asking if she'd really gotten together with that Youth League branch secretary surnamed Ma. Murongqiu counter-asked, "If it's true, what will you do?" Gu Chaoyang raised his head. "Then I'll have to duel him." Murongqiu glanced at him, a mocking smile appearing at the corners of her mouth. "Duel? Do you have that qualification? What am I to you? Who I'm with or not? Do I need your approval?" This series of questions left Gu Chaoyang unable to answer even one. He was certain the rumor was true. As a general's son, he absolutely couldn't tolerate such humiliation. To defend his dignity, he must duel that third party. For a period after that, Gu Chaoyang prepared for this future duel. But he hadn't expected that before the duel could be implemented, that third party, Shenhuangzhou Brigade Youth League branch secretary and 4th team captain Ma Ke, died in the line of duty in a sudden fire. Regarding Ma Ke's accidental death, Gu Chaoyang didn't gloat. On the contrary, he felt somewhat regretful. As a man, defending one's dignity should rely on a real duel, not on one's opponent mysteriously disappearing through such luck. He even developed a kind of sympathetic fellow feeling for that opponent he'd never met. Regardless, a man capable of attracting Murongqiu wouldn't be an ordinary person. Nevertheless, this accident profoundly affected Murongqiu's fate, thus thoroughly changing the relationship between her and Gu Chaoyang. The earth-shaking changes that occurred in the nation over subsequent years made Murongqiu leaving Shenhuangzhou to return to the city, taking college entrance exams, including Gu Chaoyang eventually becoming her spouse, all seemed so natural. As if all those twists that happened between them before were merely a preamble to the later outcome. For a time after marriage, Gu Chaoyang indeed experienced that bitter ends, sweet comes, sweetness. But strangely, he never felt the pride that should come after conquering a beloved woman. Until one day, he accidentally discovered an old photograph in Murongqiu's trunk, a photo of Murongqiu with a young man. When Gu Chaoyang's gaze fell on that young man's face with resolute gaze and thick eyebrows, he immediately guessed this was that third party he'd never met, Ma Ke. In the photo, their smiles were so bright, natural, merging with the fields behind them as if an inseparable part. In an instant, Gu Chaoyang realized that for Murongqiu, Ma Ke had never died but had always lived between them both. He discovered that despite being married so long, he'd actually never entered Murongqiu's world, let alone conquered her. Many years later, when Gu Chaoyang traveled the world, conquering women of different skin colors and nationalities one after another, becoming a multinational corporation's China head, he remained obsessed with that sense of defeat he'd suffered before his ex-wife Murongqiu. To recover this sense of defeat, he even tried finding some compensation from daughter Lulu. But ultimately, he discovered Lulu in many ways was simply identical to Murongqiu, especially that headstrong, impractical energy, simply surpassing her mother. That intense sense of defeat gripped Gu Chaoyang again. "Sir, would you like more hot water?" Gu Chaoyang looked up, seeing the qipao-wearing waitress standing before him with a smile. Only then did he discover the tea in his cup had cooled. "You just mentioned the factory," Gu Chaoyang continued Murongqiu's earlier thread. "When have workers truly controlled the factory's fate? Yangtze Electromechanical Factory is state-owned assets. Controlling state-owned assets are management cadres appointed by the government, namely these top executives like Pan Xiaoping, not workers. Either controlled by the state or controlled by capitalists, whether China or America, it's all the same. Pity many worker brothers haven't awakened from this master illusion. These years I've seen countless appeals and protests, but after all the fuss, those who should be laid off still get laid off, acquisitions still happen, completely useless. If you ask me, rather than fussing with useless things, they should take compensation and quickly seek their own way out. If they're late, no one can help them. Going further back, every great social revolution in Chinese history, though inseparable from worker and peasant support, they also sacrifice the most. Current reforms likewise require their sacrifice. Bluntly put, this is their fate. This isn't what I'm saying. It's what China's intellectual elite say. Oh, right, Murong. In many people's eyes, you also belong to the intellectual elite group. Listening to Gu Chaoyang's eloquent, confident discourse, Murong Chu couldn't find a single word to refute. She felt an unprecedented weakness to the extreme. Looking at that appeal thrown on the tea table like a rag, she suddenly felt somewhat regretful. She thought blankly, perhaps I really shouldn't have come to see Gu Chaoyang. Gu Chaoyang realized he'd taken the topic too far. He fell silent. They'd finally met once, yet endlessly discussed national affairs. Their generation was truly hopeless, Gu Chaoyang thought self-mockingly. He drank some tea, finding the taste somewhat bitter. Was it because he'd drunk too much alcohol, or had he become unaccustomed to tea? Gu Chaoyang called the waitress, ordered a cappuccino, and asked Murong Chu if she wanted one too. Murong Chu shook her head. She seemed not yet to have emerged from Gu Chaoyang's discourse. Lulu's dating someone. Do you know? Gu Chaoyang skillfully shifted the topic to family matters. Last summer vacation when she came home, Lulu told me, Murong Chu said. Gu Chaoyang felt this might be the only topic interesting to them both, couldn't easily let it pass. Lulu said you met that Kwang Sibei. What's your impression? Can't say I have much impression, just know a bit about him. Murong Chu obviously evaded. As far as I know, this young fellow is an active figure in cultural circles, and his thinking is somewhat radical. Gu Chaoyang continued. Currently in China, any radical thought or behavior has no future. It'll only bring risk to oneself. Murong Chu seemed to catch Gu Chaoyang's flaw from this statement, counter-asking, if so, why did you agree to help him build that website? Isn't this adding fuel to fire? I want to put a cage on that young man. Otherwise, who knows what kind of trouble he'll cause. I'm doing this not for that guy surnamed Kwang, but for our precious daughter. You're really painstaking, Murong Chu said, sounding both like praise and mockery. But your methods may not work on them. Lulu's fallen quite deep now. On QQ, they already call themselves revolutionary companions. This is exactly what I'm worried about. Gu Chaoyang heard Murong Chu's implication. Just as he was about to inquire further, the waitress brought over the coffee. The steaming cappuccino topped with white foam gave off the mixed fragrance of milk and coffee. He impatiently took a sip, closing his eyes in intoxication, praising, really fragrant. Murong Chu watched Gu Chaoyang savoring coffee with closed eyes, involuntarily thinking, liking cappuccino was perhaps the only common hobby between her and Gu Chaoyang. At this moment, facing this man who'd once lived with her for many years, she felt so strange. Indeed, the current Gu Chaoyang was no longer that dandy young master full of frivolous airs from years ago, but rather a transnational capital agent thoroughly versed in international and domestic political economy, like those rising bourgeoisie in Balzac's writing, his entire being exuding an ambitious yet extremely shrewd air. Chapter 21. Like a startled little bird, she suddenly jumped up from her seat and fled in panic toward the restaurant exit. This semester, Murong Chu's teaching load was particularly heavy. Besides supervising graduate students, she had an undergraduate foundation course, plus all sorts of academic conferences, really stretching her thin, feeling overwhelmed. However, with final exams ending, she could finally breathe easier. Monday morning, Murong Chu came to the college office building. She handed the completed undergraduate exam grade sheet to teaching secretary Little Q, casually asking about other instructors' grading progress. Little Q said several courses' exam grade sheets hadn't been submitted yet. Your grading speed is fastest, every semester like this, Little Q said flatteringly. Other teachers really should learn from you. Murong Chu felt Little Chu's mouth was too sweet, seizing every opportunity to compliment her. She didn't pick up Little Q's conversational thread. Just as she was about to return to her office, Little Q called out, "Professor Morong, I heard Secretary Yue is being transferred. Don't know if it's true." Secretary Yue is being transferred? Murong Chu involuntarily stopped. Where is he being transferred? How come I don't know?
I also just heard, Little Chu said haltingly. I heard he's becoming a university party committee member and personnel department director. Secretary Yue is promoted again.
Murong Chu gave an "oh." She thought, this girl usually keeps a low profile, but her information network is quite good. Such an important personnel change. I, the department head, haven't heard about it, yet she knew first. But she still doubted this news's authenticity. Recently too busy, she hadn't seen old Yue for quite some days. I also heard Secretary Yue got divorced. Little Q's words were very quiet, but when they reached Murong Chu's ears, they seemed amplified several times, more shocking than hearing about old Yue's transfer. She was pondering what logical connection existed between old Yue's divorce and transfer when Little Chu unhurriedly added, Vice President Wang just processed retirement procedures. Murong Chu felt Little Q's statement was even more baffling than the previous two pieces of news. What connection does this have with Secretary Yue's transfer and divorce? Haven't you heard? Secretary Yue's wife has always had an ambiguous relationship with Vice President Wang? Little Chu moved closer to Murong Chu, lowering her voice. Seeing Little Q's mysterious expression, Murong Chu was secretly amazed. She felt it quite inappropriate for Little Q, an unmarried young woman, to relay such news. Days ago, someone in the department told her Little Q had gotten into a big fight with an office colleague over promotion to full section chief level, getting slapped. Obviously, Vice President Wang has no more use for Secretary Yue, Little Chu continued, but Murong Chu had already quickly left the teaching secretary's office. At the mailroom, she picked up several letters and returned to her office. While opening the mail, her mind still pondered Little Q's words. The department had always had many rumors, only this time they all concentrated on old Yue. Whether true or false, there was probably some basis. As the saying goes, no wave without wind. Murong Chu was thinking randomly when the half-open office door opened. Someone walked in silently. When Murong Chu saw who it was, she was startled. "Old Yue, it's you." "Professor Murong, I haven't seen you in quite some days." Old Yue smiled broadly, like he'd just returned from a trip abroad. Murong Chu gazed searchingly at that face always full of smiles, saying insincerely, "If there's anything in the department, just notify me." "Didn't I say before, those departmental trifles won't disturb you? Besides, can't I look for you when there's nothing wrong?" Old Yu's words had implied meaning. She recalled the news she'd just heard from Little Q, couldn't help asking, "Old Yue, are you really being transferred?" Old Yue didn't answer immediately, but lowered his head silently for a while before raising his face, looking at Murong Chu. "The official notice hasn't been issued yet. Whose information is so well informed?" So everything was true, Murong Chu thought. Not happy about old Yue's promotion, but rather regretful for him. Regardless, those rumors falling on anyone weren't things to be proud of. "I originally wanted to wait until the appointment notice came down before telling you." Old Yue rubbed his hands, seeming somewhat embarrassed. "Time really flies. Working these years at the sociology department, we cooperated pretty well, right? Before officially transferring, what's your evaluation of me as a person?" Old Yue's last sentence had some joking intent, but even so, Murong Chu didn't know how to answer. To be fair, old Yue was still a decent secretary, conscientious and capable at work. But what if those rumors were all true? "Professor Murong, I'd like to treat you to a meal. May I?" Hearing this, Murong Chu was startled. She hadn't expected old Yue to suddenly make such a request. Was it to celebrate his promotion or... "Professor Murong, no other meaning." Old Yue still spoke in that respectful tone as before. Working these years at the sociology department, I really benefited from your support. We're all colleagues. No need to be so polite. I'm about to transfer. You have to let me find a chance to express my gratitude. Murong-Chu felt if she continued refusing, the other party would lose face. After all, they were work partners who'd known each other for so many years. But accepting a man's solo dinner invitation still made her feel somewhat awkward. Old Yue obviously saw Murong-Chu's hesitation. Before she clearly responded, he said, "It's settled then, Professor Murong. 5 p.m. Wutong Restaurant." Having said this, before Murong-Chu could react, he left her office. To reach Wutong Restaurant, you had to pass through the Lakeside Faculty Dormitory, exit W University's northwest gate, walk 50 meters north along Lakeside Road. Since moving out of Lakeside Faculty Dormitory, Murong-Chu hadn't been there for many years. As she passed those simple, old dormitory buildings toward the northwest gate, a nostalgia-like emotion rose in her heart. Some said after 50, people begin feeling nostalgic. Recently, she often dreamed of scenes from places she'd lived before. Was this a sign of aging? The weather gradually turned cooler. Lakeside Road's sides were covered with thick fallen leaves. When feet stepped on them, they made rustling sounds. With few pedestrians, the road appeared empty and desolate. Through tall plane trees, East Lake's water rippled, vast and hazy, merging with the increasingly dim sky. Looking far into the distance, you could vaguely see undulating groves and buildings across the lake. That was East Lake Guest House. Though approaching evening, the provincial rowing team athletes still trained. The East Lake Provincial Rowing Team's training base, team members trained on the lake surface almost daily. At this moment, 2 racing shells moved parallel across the lake. Athletes tensed their backs, extending limbs to maximum length. The oars in their hands rowed more powerfully each time. Viewed from shore, their postures seemed somewhat exaggerated, as if not a group rowing but large birds training to take flight. All along the way, Murong-Chu agonized over accepting old Yue's banquet invitation. Perhaps earlier she should have casually pulled an acquaintance on campus to eat this meal together. Right up to approaching Wutong Restaurant entrance, such thoughts still popped into her mind. Wutong Restaurant was an unimpressive-looking but seemingly exquisite bungalow. The roof and walls were covered with green vines. Before the sky completely darkened, lights installed among the vines lit up. Green vines and white-yellow lights blended together, emitting gorgeous, flickering radiance like a dream. Just as Murong-Chu reached the restaurant entrance, old Yue walked out from inside, face wearing that familiar smile, like a waiter leading her into a private room. Besides the 2 of them, the restaurant had few customers, completely unnecessary to book a private room. When entering the private room, Murong-Chu thought. But as a guest following the host's lead, once entering this restaurant, she could only follow old Yue's arrangements. Realizing this, Murong-Chu's heart again produced a trace of unease. Clearly, old Yue had deliberately dressed himself up today, removing the casual suit he never left at work, wearing a coffee-colored jacket instead. The t-shirt inside was white. His sparse hair was also tidied. His whole person appeared spirited and sharp, looking much younger than usual. This restaurant's Jingsha soft-shelled turtle is quite good, very famous throughout the city. After sitting at the dining table, old Yue pushed over tea he'd already brewed to Murong-Chu. Secretary Luo likes coming here when entertaining guests. Secretary Luo is from Jingzhou. He spoke as if revealing a great secret, lowering his voice. You know, the restaurant owner is Secretary Luo's brother-in-law. Otherwise, such a good location. Which Secretary Luo? Murong-Chu looked blank. Secretary Luo. You don't know? Old Yue said, quite surprisingly. Our school's new party committee secretary. He's been in office nearly half a year. The new secretary had been in office just half a year, yet he'd already thoroughly figured out people's relatives. This person. A shadow passed through Murong-Chu's mind. She truly began regretting she shouldn't have come to eat this meal. Regardless, she and old Yue weren't the same type of person. But things had reached this point. She could only secretly hope this meal would end quickly. The dishes came quite fast. Before they'd exchanged many words, the waitress brought today's main dish, Jingsha soft-shelled turtle hot pot. Murong-chu usually mainly ate vegetarian. No matter how good the meat, it couldn't arouse her appetite. But old Yue kept putting food in her bowl. Under such hospitality, she still ate a few pieces of turtle. The taste was indeed good, similar to dishes from Yanhe countryside where she'd been sent down when young. Old Yue wanted to pour her wine, but this time Murong-chu firmly refused. Old Yue had no choice but to pour himself a glass. Clearly, his spirits were high today. He drank 2 full glasses consecutively, his face gradually flushing. The Humanities College Dean election will start soon. Professor Murong, you must prepare diligently. I haven't decided whether to participate, Murong-chu said perfunctorily. Departmental work is heavy enough. I don't even want to be department head. You absolutely can't think this way. Many people in Humanities College want to be dean. Those truly suitable are only you and Xiao Liping. School leadership also favors you too, Old Yue said from the heart. Now Xiao Liping has already begun actively preparing the election propaganda offensive. Did you see these recent issues of the school paper's front page all reporting news department achievements? Professor Xiao returned from overseas. Moreover, their news department work is indeed excellent. According to what you're saying, before the election even starts, victory and defeat are already decided? Old Yue said, quite unconvinced. That expression, as if the competitor wasn't Murong-chu but himself. Professor Murong, you can't just admit defeat like this. Professor Xiao returned from overseas, true, but he's not as flawless as you imagine. Recently, someone reported to the University Party Committee that he embezzled departmental project funds. Hearing this, Murong-chu was shocked. Since old Yue would soon transfer to serve as school personnel department director and concurrently party committee member, he couldn't possibly speak such words casually. Before, when other colleges held dean elections, each time ended in chicken-flying, dog-jumping chaos, staging quite a few soap opera dramas. Unexpectedly now, it was Humanities College's turn. Thinking this way, Murong-chu became even more determined not to participate in the election. College dean elections have always been organized by the school personnel department. After taking office, the first task I'll handle is selecting Humanities College dean. Professor Murong, I can give you the bottom line today. As long as you don't back out, this dean position definitely belongs to you, Old Yue said earnestly, that posture, just short of thumping his own chest. Murong-chu looked at him puzzled. Old Yue, you invited me to dinner today just for this matter? Of course not. Not. Old Yue was startled, even stammering. His eyes rolled, immediately changing topics. Professor Murong, you might not believe this. Inviting you to this meal today has been my wish for many years. Wish for many years? Murong-chu grew even more confused. You were only transferred to the sociology department 2 or 3 years ago. How has it become a wish for many years? You and I didn't just meet when I transferred to sociology. Old Yue gazed at Murong-chu. We've known each other for over 10 years. Murong-chu felt old Yue's expression was somewhat strange when saying this, his gaze staring straight, unmoving. Initially, she thought the other party had drunk too much, but old Yue's next words completely stunned her. Over 10 years ago, I'd just been demobilized from a Southwest Mountain troop to W University, working in the logistics department as an electrical circuit maintenance worker. My first job assignment after starting work was repairing circuits at your home. At that time, you lived alone with your child in Lakeside Faculty Dormitory. Every day, leaving early and returning late, having to pick up and drop off your child for work. Every time I saw your slender figure riding a bicycle through campus, my heart couldn't help but produce a feeling of tender affection. Yes, tender affection. Hearing this word, you might find it laughable. What qualification does a small electrical circuit maintenance worker have to pity a female university teacher? Actually, not only would you think this way, I also think this way. Someone like me who relied on my wife to transfer into W University, I despise even myself. Usually at home, I'm obsequious before my wife, cooking, mopping floors. Before sleeping at night, I even wash her feet, serving her like a servant. But her? Every few days she meets with that guy surnamed Wang. Every time sharing a bed with my wife, images of them tumbling together float into my mind. I hate with gritted teeth, but don't know if I hate my wife, that guy surnamed Wang, or myself. Just like my wife once said to me, pack away your pitiful man's self-respect. Without me, without Vice President Wang, you'd still be sleeping on the ground in mountain valleys. Can a person whose love and hate are unclear be called a qualified man? But since seeing you, every day my mind fills with your shadow. I even possessed by a ghost ran to help you haul honeycomb coal. I knew I'd fallen in love with you. As the saying goes, a toad wanting to eat swan meat? Am I possessed? But I couldn't help myself. Every time encountering your dignified, elegant figure on campus, I'd involuntarily hide roadside, secretly following behind you until your figure disappeared. I felt ashamed and terrified of my behavior. I feared if time dragged on, I'd do something foolish. Fortunately, before long, you moved out of Lakeside Dormitory. I also changed jobs. Later, relying on Vice President Wang's connections, I gradually rose step by step, until 3 years ago transferring to sociology. Reaching this point, old Yui's face showed a dreamlike expression. Murong Chu also felt as if dreaming. This person before her, this scene, everything made her feel completely strange. She wanted to stand up, immediately escape from here, but she felt her body wouldn't obey, could only steel herself to continue listening. These 3 years, though you and I became work partners, meeting almost weekly, I still felt the distance between you and me remained as remote as over 10 years ago. I dreamed of removing that wall standing before you and me. For this purpose, I desperately studied and worked, because I knew this was the only way to shorten the distance between us. Until recently, that damned Vice President Wang finally retired. The second day after getting this news, I unhesitatingly proposed divorce to my wife. Not for anything else, only to be an upright man, to be able to uprightly love someone. Murong, do you now understand why I said inviting you to dinner is my wish of many years? Hearing old Yue's soft Murong Chu's ears seemed to thunder. She couldn't help trembling. She saw old Yue leave his seat, walk before her, kneeling down with a thud, raising his face. What surprised her even more, this man's eyes shed a string of murky tears. All these years, like King Gujian of Yue, I endured hardships, finally making it through. Now I can finally boldly declare my love to my beloved. Having said this, tears rolled down from old Yue's eye sockets. Murong Chu could no longer contain herself. Like a startled little bird, she suddenly jumped up from her seat and fled in panic toward the restaurant exit. The moment she rushed out of the private room, she heard old Yue muttering behind, "Murong, don't leave. I swear, for you I'm willing to do anything. Even climbing knife mountains or diving through seas of fire, I dare jump." At that moment, Murong Chu felt she was about to collapse. Half a month later on a weekend, Murong Chu received a call from sociological research editor Wu Yan, telling her a paper had passed final review and would be published in the next issue. However, due to space limitations, we may need to delete 2,000 characters, Wu Yan asked in a consulting tone. Big sister, would you prefer to do it yourself or leave it to the editors? According to Murong Chu's usual habit, she would have done it herself, but thinking of the pile of matters at hand, she said, then please do it for us. Murong Chu and Wu Yan were old friends. After discussing editorial business, they'd naturally chat casually. Big sister Murong, do you and Professor He Wei really have absolutely no hope? Wu Yan played the matchmaker role again. Not long ago, old He came to Beijing for a conference. When mentioning you, he was still reluctant to let go. Looking at him, he's probably still unwilling. Murong Chu immediately knew Wu Yan was pleading on He Wei's behalf. This old pedant was quite persistent. She remained silent on the phone for quite a while. The clever Wu Yan obviously realized she didn't want to discuss this matter and stopped probing. All right, no more chit-chat. Big Sister Murong, let me tell you something serious. She changed topics, speaking solemnly. A couple days ago, President Zhuang came to our editorial department for an editorial committee meeting. He told me the next annual conference's co-host organization still hasn't been settled. He said, "Wu Yan, aren't you concurrently serving as Sociology Association Deputy Secretary General? Help me figure something out." Wu Yan imitated Zhuang Dingxian's speaking manner, putting on airs. Originally frowning, Murong Chu was also amused by her. "Big Sister Murong, President Zhuang gave me such a big task. You must save me." Murong Chu was startled. "How can I save you?" Wu Yan said, "You're a celebrity in your province with big connections. Help find a co-host organization." President Zhuang also said whoever among the association directors contacts a co-host organization automatically becomes vice president. Murong Chu immediately interrupted. "Don't tempt people with vice president positions. I'm not at all interested in that thing." Wu Yan quickly corrected herself, giggling. "I misspoke, Big Sister. I know you've always been aloof, viewing fame and profit as floating clouds, but you can't refuse to save me." Hearing Wu Yan's pleading tone, Murong Chu felt somewhat helpless. She wasn't unaware of the Sociology Association's situation in recent years. With just that little funding, forget convening annual conferences, even supporting the annual members' newsletter wasn't enough. So starting 2 years ago, the annual conference held once a year had to change to once every 2 years. The conference name also changed to National Sociology Association Summit Forum. Conference funding mainly came from several presidents and vice presidents, finding sponsorships through various connections with local government departments and enterprises, constantly facing unsustainable danger. Now Wu Yan had kicked this ball to her feet, leaving Murong Chu quite awkward. Given her close relationship with Wu Yan, she really couldn't laugh it off. Right, I'll try," Murong Chu answered Wu Yan in a big sister-to-little sister tone. "But don't hold too much hope," Wu Yan cheered on the phone. "I knew you'd help me, Big Sister, oorah, oorah!" Wu Yan shouted slogans, her voice so loud it nearly burst Murong Chu's eardrums. After hanging up, Murong Chu suddenly regretted rashly agreeing to help Wu Yan. But things had reached this point. She could only do her best. She searched her mind several times, seeing if she could find several targets to contact as co-host organizations. But thinking front and back, not one suitable target appeared. It was then Murong Chu thought of Ding Yuping. She hadn't seen this Yanhe County Vice County Magistrate who'd received his graduate degree from her for quite some time. Some days ago, when Murong Chu attended a provincial conference, she heard Han Peng say he'd already become Yanhe County Magistrate, working quite impressively. New officials 3 fires. He invited Gu Chaoyang to Yanhe County, investing in such a large project. Provincial leadership publicly praised him at meetings. So Murong Chu called Ding Yuping. Unexpectedly, just as she finished mentioning the conference, Ding Yuping readily agreed. "Professor Murong, Yanhe County's development just entered the fast lane and will soon change from county to city status. We really need vigorous support and publicity from all sectors, including academia. Holding your conference in Yanhe County? No problem. We'll cover all expenses." Things went unexpectedly smoothly. So smoothly, Murong Chu simply couldn't believe it was real. By evening, she still hadn't told Wu Yan this news. "Wait a bit longer. What if something changes?" she muttered to herself. Not until the next morning did Murong Chu believe this matter should be real, then called Wu Yan. After listening, Wu Yan seemed not to believe, then was so happy she cried and laughed. "Big sister, my good big sister, you've helped me this time. No, helped our association greatly. You're truly our savior." Grateful words popped from Wu Yan's mouth like grapes in a string. Murong Chu felt somewhat nauseated and quickly hung up. The department still had matters waiting for her. Murong Chu walked to the residential area gate. The guard called out, "Professor Murong, you have a package." At the gatehouse, the guard had Murong Chu sign for the package. After signing, she went to lift the package. It was quite heavy, couldn't lift it. She looked at the package, which had several characters written, Tongsan Ecological Rice. Below was a line of small characters. Sent from Tongsan Ecological Planting and Sales Farmers Professional Cooperative, Shenhuangzhou Village, Heku, Yanhe County. Murongchu's gaze seemed magnetized, lingering on those characters Shenhuangzhou for a long, long time. Chapter 22. Both were foreign films. One was the Albanian movie The Eighth is a Bronze Statue, the other the North Korean film The Flower Girl. As a remote, small county with a population under 500,000, Yanhe was hosting the Chinese Sociology Association Summit Forum National Conference for the first time. Moreover, it coincided with Yanhe's county-to-city conversion celebration activities just beginning. The degree of importance attached to it was self-evident. As early as half a year ago, Yanhe had established an organizing committee with Chinese Sociology Association Executive Vice President Zhuang Dingxian and Yanhe County Magistrate Ding Yuping serving as co-chairs. Ding Yuping simultaneously served as leader of Yanhe County's County-to-City Conversion Celebration Activity Preparatory Leadership Group. County Party Secretary Old Wei had gone to the Central Party School 6 months ago to attend the County and City Party Secretary training course. Big and small county matters had all been pushed onto Ding Yuping's shoulders. Old Wei had originally been a division director at the Provincial Government Policy Research Office, having served as secretary to 2 provincial party committee secretaries. His background and connections were naturally extraordinary. Anyone with eyes knew his posting to Yanhe was just short-term temporary assignment and gold plating. Before long, he'd transfer back to the province for a new position. As Yanhe County's homegrown county magistrate, Ding Yuping naturally couldn't, like these parachuted cadres, grab some political achievements through vanity projects, then slip away. He had to do real work, truly win the trust of Yanhe's broad cadres and masses. Therefore, regarding the current one forum, one activity, he treated it both as work pressure and a rare opportunity, investing double the attention. He knew this concerned not only Yanhe's external image, but would directly affect whether he could smoothly assume the secretary position after Old Wei's departure. Publicly and privately, he could only win, not lose. Thus, from forum delegates' accommodations, conference agenda, security and transportation to sightseeing tours, Ding Yuping personally oversaw everything, striving to leave no blind spots. To elevate the forum's status, he even made a special trip to Wuhan, hoping to invite a provincial party committee vice secretary or vice governor to attend. But the provincial government had recently imposed strict regulations on leaders attending activities. After much effort, he only managed to invite Provincial People's Congress Vice Director Han Peng. The forum schedule was relatively relaxed. Most scholars and professors attending the Chinese Sociology Association's Summit Forum were visiting Yanhe for the first time. On the agenda, Murongchu unexpectedly saw Mala's name. He was even scheduled to speak at the next afternoon's Farmers' Professional Cooperatives and New Rural Development Trends Symposium. The shadow of that introverted, somewhat shy Shenhuangzhou youth floated into Murongchu's mind, along with the Tongsan brand ecological rice and kiwi fruit she'd received. Murongchu remembered Mala was 6 or 7 years younger than Ma Ke and herself. Over 20 years had passed. He must be middle-aged now. The first day was free activities. Murongchu had originally planned to tour the county town alone after her afternoon rest. The last time she'd visited the county seat was as a sent-down youth attending the county-wide Educated Youth Advanced Representatives Conference nearly 30 years ago. The city appearance and even the entire county layout had undergone earth-shaking changes. She'd already gotten a preliminary sense of this through hasty glimpses from the bus window when arriving from Wuhan with other delegates this morning. But after finishing lunch, just as Murongchu reached the restaurant entrance, Wu Yan grabbed her. "Big Sister Murong, accompany me to see Liu Bei's wife, Lady Sun's statue, walk across shadow-reflecting bridge where Lady Sun had her portrait reflected." Wu Yan gripped Murongchu's arm tightly, as if fearing she'd escape. "Didn't you work as a sent-down youth in Yanhe? Trouble you to be a guide once. I'm unfamiliar with the place. If I get lost and tricked by bad people, wouldn't that damage your second hometown's reputation? Murong Chu could only smile wryly. Wu Yan had recently been promoted to deputy editor-in-chief of Sociological Journal. But look at her boisterous manner. A woman in her 40s still acting like a tomboy. However, it was also thanks to this casual personality that dealing with a bunch of pedantic professors and scholars avoided much fussiness. Some originally complex matters, once in her hands, somehow resolved themselves. From her heart, Murong Chu quite liked Wu Yan. Otherwise, their friendship wouldn't have lasted until today. Whenever they met, even across thousands of miles via phone, they always had endless topics, from current affairs to gossip, from academic circles' strange anecdotes to women's intimate private conversations. Once they started talking, it never ended. This intimacy perhaps only existed between close girlfriends? Thinking this, Murong Chu felt sacrificing precious afternoon rest time to accompany Wu Yan was appropriate. After all, she'd spent so many years in Yanhe, while Wu Yan was visiting for the first time. Having Murong Chu serve as guide was indeed difficult. When she and Wu Yan emerged from their lodging at Yanhe guest house onto streets thronging with people and flowing with traffic, she immediately felt disoriented, unable to distinguish east from west, north from south. No choice. They had to hail a taxi. What Murong Chu hadn't expected was the trip from Yanhe guest house to Bija Mountain took just minutes. If you knew the way, walking would take maybe half an hour. The taxi stopped at the river embankment. The driver said, "Up ahead is Sanyi Temple. You can climb the mountain from there." Murong Chu remembered, years ago after the county-wide Educated Youth Advanced Representatives Conference, she'd climbed Bijia Mountain with several Heku commune representatives, ascending via a small path beside Sanyi Temple. Sanyi Temple was a temple Yanhe people built commemorating Liu Bei, Guan Yu, and Zhang Fei's sworn brotherhood, constructed during the Ming Dynasty Wanli reign. Reportedly, the chief minister who proposed and allocated official silver for building this temple was Zhang Zhuzhang. But this was only folk legend, impossible to verify. Of course, considering Zhang Zhuzhang was from Jiangling, separated from Yanhe by only one county, proposing this motion wasn't impossible. The temple's scale wasn't large, but by virtue of the legend of Liu Bei's marriage, it had once attracted many pilgrims and devotees, experiencing periods of flourishing incense. That time, when Murong Chu and several youth representatives came to the riverbank preparing to climb the mountain, seeing a dilapidated temple by the river, they curiously walked over. At the temple entrance grew an old locust tree with swaying branches and leaves. Inside the temple, forget monks, there wasn't even a gatekeeper. The courtyard was covered with withered leaves and thick moss. The two bronze incense burners were filled with thick dust. Clearly, no one had burned incense or offered tribute for a long time. The two stone lions outside the main hall lay toppled on the ground, one missing its head, the other lacking two legs. In the main hall's center stood stone statues of Liu, Guan, and Zhang. But except for Liu Bei in the middle remaining intact, Guan Yu on the left was missing 3 of 5 fingers from one hand, that famous green dragon crescent blade nowhere to be found. Zhang Fei on the right had lost his entire head, leaving only an empty skull cavity. Quite eerie. In the early 1970s, having just experienced the Cultural Revolution, temples large and small throughout China's cities and countryside were all regarded as four olds, belonging to the sweep-away category. But Sanyi Temple's desolate, barren scene still amazed Murong Chu. She somehow thought of Wuhan's Guiyuan Temple. In elementary school, Mother had once taken her to burn incense there. Those 800 arhats with varied forms, lifelike, they left an unforgettable impression. When Murong Chu and Wu Yan walked along the embankment for a stretch, arriving at where Sanyi Temple existed in her memory, what they saw wasn't that abandoned temple, but a 4-story building surrounded by iron railings. Beside the iron gate hung a white sign with black characters, Yanhe County Hydrological Station. Murong Chu thought she'd taken the wrong road. Just as she looked around bewildered, a middle-aged man black as charcoal emerged from the iron gate, asking whom they sought. "Excuse me, where is Sanyi Temple?"
Sanyi Temple?
The black-faced man seemed somewhat unfamiliar with these words.
What are you looking for Sanyi Temple for? Burn incense or worship Buddha?
Not doing anything, just looking around. Murong Chu spoke in broken Yanhei dialect. Sanyi Temple was demolished long ago. Just that tree's left, the black-faced man muttered, pointing at the courtyard enclosed by iron railings. Murong Chu immediately spotted that old locust tree. After 30 years of wind, rain, sun, and dew, the old locust's trunk remained so vigorous, leaves clustering together like a deep green giant umbrella. Sunlight dappled through leaf gaps, as if scattering gold foil on the ground. The image of Sanyi Temple's incomplete Liu Guanzhang stone statues floated into Murong Chu's mind. Just as she felt somewhat dazed, Wu Yan tugged her sleeve. "Look there!" Following her pointing finger, Murong Chu saw beside the hydrological station a small path shaded by trees. At the path entrance stood a crude wooden sign, "Visit Liu Bei and Lady Sun statue. Enter here." The two exchanged smiles and walked along that path. It was late April. Early summer weather was mild and cool. Both sides of the mountain path were overgrown with dense shrubs and vines. Wildflowers, red and yellow, bloomed everywhere among rocks and weeds. Cicada calls rose and fell like a men's and women's small chorus. 30 years ago, when climbing Bijia Mountain, the season was also late spring/early summer. Murong Chu and several youth representatives climbed along the winding, quiet path toward the summit. Someone proposed they sing. They started with "We Are Chairman Mao's Red Guards," then "The Sun Rises Over the Grassland," "Luyang River," Yimeng Minor Key, "Who Says My Hometown Isn't Beautiful," plus "In That Distant Place" and "Moscow Nights." The last two were love songs, forbidden songs at the time. Before they knew it, they'd reached Bijia Mountain summit. The wind was fresh, the air clear, the sky high with scattered clouds. The Jingjiang flowed like an elegant silk ribbon, making a great bend at Yanhe County town, singing joyfully as it flowed east. Barges loaded with cargo lined up in long queues, passing by in succession. Whistle sounds continuously filled the ears. Bright national flags at bowheads fluttered in wind, from afar looking like leaping flames. The sent-down youth were deeply attracted by this magnificent Jing River transportation scene, striking poses of hearts embracing the motherland, eyes viewing the world. Some sang loudly, "Horse, slow down your pace, slow down. I want to fully appreciate this magnificent scenery." Others recited Chairman Mao's poem Spring in Changsha. At the summit stood a radar military facility. A platoon of PLA soldiers bore radar guard and maintenance duties. The radar and barracks were within a designated military management zone, barracks surrounded by red walls, broken glass shards planted along wall tops, armed sentries with steel rifles standing guard at the entrance. After appreciating riverside scenery a while, someone proposed, "Let's visit the radar." This bold suggestion won unanimous approval. Though they all felt the idea somewhat far-fetched, holding a try-it attitude, they walked toward the barracks entrance. On everyone's behalf, Murong Chu raised the visit request to the standing sentry. The sentry looked under 20, light down just appearing on his upper lip, delicate like a girl. His pressed grass-green uniform and collar's bright red insignia made his face appear quite handsome. He looked at this group of brothers and sisters, all older than himself, with surprise and suspicion, appearing somewhat awkward.
"This is a military-restricted area. How can we allow casual visits?"
Murong Chu said, "Comrade, we're Heku Commune sent-down youth, attending the county-wide Educated Youth Advanced Representatives Conference. Chairman Mao teaches us not only to learn from workers and peasants, but also from soldiers." As she spoke, she pulled out her delegate certificate and handed it over. The young soldier, probably seeing her sincere attitude, hesitated. "Such a big matter. I can't decide. Let me request instructions from leadership." Later, they smoothly entered the barracks, seeing the radar for the first time, plus those enthusiastic, innocent, lovable PLA soldiers. Before long, Murongchu and Wu Yan reached Bijia Mountain summit. Perhaps due to age, or usually exercising too little, both had weak legs and broke out in sweat. After reaching the summit, Murongchu once again experienced that unrecognizable feeling she'd experienced earlier at the riverbank. First, the radar and radar guard unit barracks she'd seen before had vanished. If not for remaining sections of barracks wall and radar base, Murongchu simply couldn't believe a small radar unit had once been stationed on the mountain, along with that green recruit sentry. What amazed her even more, due to years of mountain blasting and quarrying, the majestic, tall Bijia Mountain seemed cleaved in half by a knife. The riverside peak had become a steep cliff, standing crookedly at the water's edge like a wounded soldier missing an arm. Several mountains surrounded Yanhe County town. Bijia Mountain was the largest. Due to large-scale construction needs, Yanhe County's mountain blasting and quarrying had begun in the 1970s. At that time, the blasting project was still just at a small mountain beside Bijia Mountain. That quarry set off explosions twice daily, morning and afternoon. Even from Shenhuangzhou, over 10 kilometers away, you could hear the thunderous rumbling of mountain blasting from the county direction. When did the quarrying extend to Bijia Mountain? What puzzled Murongchu even more? Did the radar unit have to relocate elsewhere because quarrying affected safety? Or did Bijia Mountain only begin blasting and quarrying after the radar unit moved? But regardless of which came first, in just under 30 years, a majestic, lush mountain had been blasted to such a tragic state, shocking enough to make her feel. Visiting Liu Bei and Lady Sun's statue in this mood, Murongchu felt truly had a special flavor rising to the heart. Wu Yan, entirely unaffected by her emotions upon seeing that bronze sculpture of Liu Bei and Lady Sun on the hillside, was like meeting long-lost relatives, cheering joyfully while pulling out her camera, clicking away endlessly. Sometimes having Murongchu photograph her, sometimes photographing Murongchu. She wanted a photo together, but no one else was on the mountain. Regretting not bringing a tripod, she reluctantly gave up. Murongchu's heart admired Wu Yan's good spirits. Regardless of what scenic spot, she always held up the camera madly clicking. Actually, from her unprofessional perspective, this Liu Bei Lady Sun sculpture before them was still too crude. The two figures' facial expressions were wooden. You couldn't see any newlywed tenderness or deep affection. Moreover, when Liu Bei married Sun Shangxiang, he was already over 50, right? Yet here he appeared so young. Instead, Lady Sun's plump appearance made her seem older than Liu Bei. Murongchu shifted her gaze from the sculpture to the distance. East of the mountain was Yanhe County's central urban area. Rows of buildings, tall and short, new and old, spread out radially, extending to the horizon. If you compared dense building clusters to human muscles, then streets and roads of varying widths and lengths were like blood vessels, crisscrossing, densely packed, making the entire county appear proportionate and well-balanced, displaying vigorous vitality. Even standing on a mountain over 100 meters high, you could feel life's breath rushing toward you. Murongchu realized this county town, compared to 30 years ago, had at least doubled in size. Murongchu withdrew her gaze from the noisy county town, turned 180 degrees, looking toward the river west of Bijia Mountain. The mighty Jingjiang, flowing north to south, suddenly made a 90-degree turn when reaching Yanhe County, changing to west to east flow. The channel also suddenly narrowed. Water flow became turbulent and fierce. Whirlpools increased. Passing vessels had to slow down. One careless moment could cause ship collisions or grounding. The river's sharp directional change altered not just water velocity, but fish physiological functions. Famous Bijia fish maw came from Bagrid catfish from this river section. Catfish maws in this section were large and plump, cooked flavor exceptionally delicious. Reportedly during the Qing dynasty, Yanhe County magistrates presented this delicacy to court. After Empress Dowager Cixi tasted it, she praised endlessly, proclaiming Bijia fish maw imperial court cuisine. Every year, specially prepared fish maws were transported from Yanhe as tribute. These historical anecdotes, Murong Chu had actually read in promotional materials in Bijia fish maw gift bags Ding Yuping had sent her years ago. Speaking of which, even Murong Chu herself didn't believe it. She'd worked as a sent-down youth in Yanhe for several years, never once tasting Bijia fish maw's flavor. Yet after leaving Yanhe many years, people kept bringing it as gifts to her door. After tasting it twice, she felt the flavor was nothing special. Looking from the summit toward the opposite riverbank was a vast expanse of reed marshes spanning dozens of square li. The reed marshes were also called Liu Langpu. According to Yanhe County Gazetteer records, when Liu Bei married Sun Shangshang years ago, he camped at this location, waiting bitterly over a month for his bride. Every autumn, pure white reed flowers danced everywhere in the sky. When south winds blew, reed flowers flew like snowflakes across the river. The entire county town's sky floated with swirling reed flowers like heavy goose feather snow. Now was late spring/early summer, not yet reed flower season, but now was the time for eating reed shoots. During sent-down youth days, Murong Chu more than once walked 7 or 8 li with youth companions, risking being caught by managers and fined, coming to reed marshes to pick reed shoots. After returning, first boiling in water, then stir-frying or cooking with cured meat, the flavor was absolutely wonderful. River breezes blew gently. Murong Chu felt like a hand gently caressing her cheeks. Afternoon sunlight slanted down, reflecting countless golden rays, making the river surface seem ablaze. Murong Chu used her palm to shade her forehead, simply sitting on the ground, silently appreciating the magnificent scene as the sun slowly sank west. After Wu Yan finished busily photographing and packed away her camera, she also sat on the ground beside Murong Chu. Neither spoke. Wu Yan was a bit tired from constantly photographing. Murong Chu's emotions, her heart seemed wrapped by an incredibly dense melancholy that wouldn't dissolve. They stayed until the sun sank below the river surface, twilight gradually deepening before descending the mountain. Earlier, when taking the taxi, Murong Chu had learned the route from Heku guest house to the riverbank, so she proposed walking back. Wu Yan also wanted to experience this small county town's local customs. The two thus descended the embankment, entering the county town's main street. Though already approaching evening, the street remained as lively as daytime. Shops lined both street sides: fashion stores, lighting stores, general stores, furniture stores, beauty salons, bars, restaurants, internet cafes, one after another. Some shop entrances were so crowded with customers coming and going they were impenetrable. A tea specialty shop entrance was holding a prize sale. Service staff shouted hoarsely, "Authentic Westlake Longjing tea, buy 2 get 1 free, buy 3 get 2 free. Don't miss this opportunity, it won't come again." An audio-video store entrance was playing Mao Ning's The Sound of Waves Remains. Leave behind true feelings, let it moor at Maple Bridge side. Can this old boat ticket board your passenger ship? Also, little sister sits at bow, big brother walks ashore, love and affection, tow rope swaying. Attracting many passing young men and women to stop and listen. Pedicab drivers with yellow canopies continuously rang bells, nimbly weaving through crowded streets. Several people with dark, rough faces, clothes still seeming to carry mud specks, walked toward them carrying large and small bundles, hurried steps, obviously country people rushing home after shopping in town. A dusty, noisy life atmosphere echoed through the county town's streets and alleys, making people feel a prosperity and restlessness only found in big cities. Not far ahead was Jianxi Road. This street was Yanhe County's center. Besides the county party committee and government compound, plus government departments like County Finance Bureau, Broadcasting and Television Bureau, Xinhua Bookstore, Department Store, and Theater were all on this street. Passing the Broadcasting Bureau entrance, Murong Chu saw someone removing the old Yanhe County Broadcasting and Television Bureau sign, replacing it with the new Yanhe City Broadcasting and Television Bureau sign. Though the official county-to-city conversion ceremony hadn't yet been held, some departments were already impatient. Walking past Xinhua Bookstore, Murong Chu saw a gray 3-story building standing ahead. Several large characters' Yanhe Theater, made from neon light tubes, flickered in twilight. On the wall directly above the theater hung a poster for the American film Star Trek, recently showing in major cities. The theater entrance was crowded with brightly dressed girls and young men. Some couples sat intimately whispering on cement steps. Some wore headphones alone, listening to music on MP3 players. Some held Kentucky Fried Chicken drumsticks, gnawing large bites with no one around. This familiar scene warmed Murong Chu's heart. That time attending the county-wide Educated Youth Advanced Representatives Conference, the County Youth League Committee treated attending delegates to 2 films at the newly completed theater, both foreign films. One was the Albanian movie The Eighth is a Bronze Statue, the other the North Korean film The Flower Girl. After watching the films, Murong Chu discovered not only herself but other female sent-down youth. Everyone had eyes red and swollen like peaches, some faces still bearing tear traces. I just took my son to see this film days ago. Sci-fi, war, animation, plus high-tech photography. Hollywood films now desperately throw money into movies. Chinese people just love this. Isn't it strange? Wu Yun sighed. Just this broken film reportedly premiered simultaneously in Beijing and New York. Just days later, even this remote small county is showing it. The speed is too fast. Murong Chu collected her thoughts, smiled. Otherwise, why call it globalization? While talking, they'd returned to Yanhe guest house entrance. Beside the guest house was a small restaurant called Come Again. The owner had placed dining tables and operation area at the roadside. Various seasonal vegetables also displayed streetside. A fat-eared chef performed before roaring flames, wielding a large ladle, stir-frying, braising, pan-frying, stewing. Fragrant aromas assailed people, making mouths water. Some pedestrians couldn't resist temptation entering the restaurant. Wu Yun's appetite was also aroused. She said to Murong Chu, "Why don't we just eat dinner at this small restaurant?" Murong Chu also wanted to taste county town flavor. The two hit it off, sitting down at a dining table before the restaurant entrance. Just after sitting, Wu Yun picked up the menu, saying to Murong Chu, "Big sister, this forum really benefited from your help. I haven't thanked you yet. Let me treat today." "Let me instead." Murong Chu snatched the menu from Wu Yun's hands. "Didn't you say Yanhe is my second hometown? How can hosts let guests pay?" While the two argued over who would be host, the owner, a middle-aged man looking shrewd and clever, walked over smiling. "Two teachers clearly came from big cities. Intellectuals attending the summit forum, right?" Wu Yan giggled. "Seems you're quite cultured, even know about summit forum. Look at what you're saying. Such a big banner hangs at the guest house entrance. How could I not know?" the owner said modestly. "Want me to recommend several Yanhe specialty dishes?" Wu Yan stopped competing with Murong Chu for the menu, going with the flow. "Fine, you order for us. If it's good, we'll come again. 1 sun-dried fish, 1 cloud ear mushroom fish balls, both Yanhe's top dishes." The owner quickly named 2 dishes. Murong Chu suddenly interrupted. "Do you have stir-fried reed shoots with cured meat? That's a Yanhe famous dish, sells very well." The owner sized up Murong Chu. "Are you perhaps from Yanhe?" Murong Chu said, "I worked as a sent-down youth in Yanhe for several years." The owner's eyes lit up. "Oh, where did you work?" "Heku Commune." "Ha, I also worked as sent-down youth in Nianziwan Commune," the owner said, like meeting a long-lost comrade in arms, face full of smiles. "This way, today's meal I'll give you 20% discount, plus a free order of stir-fried reed shoots with cured meat. The reed shoots I saved for my own drinking snack." Murong Chu quickly expressed thanks. The owner waved his hand. "Thank for what? We're sent-down youth companions." That intimate tone sounded like saying, "We're relatives." After finishing, the owner instructed the chef to cook for them. "Big sister, you sent-down youth are really amazing. Walking anywhere in the country you can find companions, so convenient for handling matters," Wu Yan said enviously. She was born in the 1960s. During the sent-down youth movement, she was still in elementary school. After climbing the mountain all afternoon, Murong Chu felt somewhat thirsty. She drank some tea, savoring impressions from walking along the street just now, a sense of time confusion.
"Big sister, look who that is," Wu Yan suddenly called out quietly.
Following her gaze, Murong Chu saw a familiar figure crossing the opposite road toward Yanhe Guest House. That slightly hunched back and slow but resolute gait, Murong Chu immediately recognized as He Wei. When departing Wuhan for Yanhe, they weren't on the same bus. Now, suddenly seeing He Wei on the street, Murong Chu was somewhat surprised. Night deepened. She couldn't see He Wei's face clearly, but that slightly upturned face still allowed her to imagine that bookish expression. "See that woman beside him?" Wu Yan prompted excitedly in her ear. "Her name is Li Wanxia, a doctoral student old He recruited last year." When Murong Chu shifted her gaze toward the thin, bespectacled woman beside He Wei, the two had already walked arm in arm through Heku Guest House's entrance.
They've now publicly acknowledged their relationship. Wherever old He goes, he brings Li Wanxia. The two have over 20 years age difference, Wu Yan whispered, like providing intelligence. Last year, old He went to Australia as a visiting scholar. Early this year, attending a Beijing conference, Li Wanxia also accompanied him. I heard they'll marry soon. Murong Chu withdrew her gaze, He Wei's love letter sentences that made faces burn floating into her mind. Her heart felt somewhat melancholic. After a while, she recovered, saying, "Old He is a good person. These years haven't been easy. I hope he can find his own happiness from now on." Wu Yan glanced at her with an odd expression, wanting to say something but closing her mouth. She obviously remembered her initial matchmaking efforts for Murong Chu and He Wei. Clever Wu Yan naturally wouldn't mention this matter at such a time, but cleverly redirected. However, though old He succeeds romantically, career-wise he's not so smooth. How so? Haven't you heard? The recently concluded National Social Science Book Awards, old He's The Transformation of He Family Village, initially had high acclaim but ultimately lost by 1 vote. Murong Chu softly said, "Oh." Though she'd always felt The Transformation of He Family Village was a rare masterpiece in sociology in recent years. As for why it didn't win, she usually didn't care about these rights and wrongs in academic fame and profit circles, so had no knowledge. "Know whose vote that crucial vote was?" Wu Yan said mysteriously, looking left and right as if fearing being overheard.
"Whose?" "Our President Zhuang Dingxian," Wu Yan said quietly. Old Zhuang wasn't just one of 8 final judges, but also judging committee chairman. His opinion naturally carried weight. I heard he publicly said at the final judging meeting that the transformation of He Family Village's political orientation had problems. Discussing academics should discuss academics. How can old Zhuang arbitrarily pin labels on people? Murong Chu was hearing this for the first time, couldn't help getting somewhat angry. Right. Unexpectedly, usually broad-minded, generous President Zhuang became so narrow-minded. Old He is just a bookworm. How does he hinder him? Wu Yan continued defending He Wei's injustice. If not for President Zhuang suppressing him, with old He's influence and qualifications, he should have long become vice president. President Zhuang and old He were even classmates in that Peking University graduate class. Born from the same root, why torment each other so urgently? The reason Murong Chu increasingly participated less in academic activities was simply disliking academic circles' scheming and fame-chasing, now adding partisan attacks and political framing. She suddenly felt somewhat regretful. Really shouldn't have helped Zhuang Dingxian and Wu Yan facilitate this conference. She even thought, if truly, as Wu Yan said, at tomorrow's leadership change election meeting, she should seriously consider whether to accept the vice president academic position. Just then, the owner brought up dishes. Both were hungry, quickly picking up chopsticks, tasting all dishes, the flavor indeed quite good. Murong Chu felt the stir-fried reed shoots with cured meat, though lacking that remembered fresh flavor, was still quite appetizing. Wu Yan, appetite fully opened, temporarily requested a bottle of beer, insisting Murong Chu drink together. Murong Chu couldn't refuse, letting her pour half a glass. She hadn't touched alcohol in a long time. 30 years ago? That time coming to the county for the Educated Youth Advanced Representatives Conference, after the meeting concluded, she and several Yanhe delegates pooled money for a gathering at the state-owned restaurant opposite the department store. She, too, couldn't resist urging, nearly getting drunk. Someone died again today in Guangjiapu. This is already the 5th person to die this month. All got that strange disease. Suddenly, low voices came from the neighboring table. Murong Chu snapped back to awareness, glancing at the neighboring table. 2 men, one older, one younger, drinking while chatting in local dialect. The 2 dishes on their table had already exposed plate bottoms. This continues. In a few more years, Guangjiapu people might all die. The entire county town will follow suit. Damn it! All evil done by Chufeng Group. This bunch of childless bastards will get their comeuppance sooner or later. With those county masters protecting them, what comeuppance will they get? Just watch. I heard the dead person's family is about to carry the corpse to Chufeng Company entrance. If they don't stop poisoning, things will get out of control. Murong Chu's heart vaguely produced a trace of unease. She raised her head, looking at the street. Night had fallen. Shops on both street sides still glittered brilliantly, lively as daylight. Pedestrians thronged the road, a scene of peace and harmony. Murong Chu returned to her guest house room, took a hot shower, sat on the sofa. Casually picking up materials just distributed by the conference group, she browsed absent-mindedly. Suddenly, on the forum agenda, she saw a familiar name. Ma La. Ma La was arranged to speak at the themed forum as representative of Yanhe County's new type Farmers Professional Cooperative. Murong Chu stared at those 2 characters, Ma La, taking out from the materials bag a thick forum speech compilation. Following the table of contents, she scanned down line by line, seeing Ma La's speech draft. It was just a 2-page speech outline, content nothing more than Ma La's process of establishing Tongsin Cooperative these years, plus his reflections on new rural construction. Murong Chu read very carefully, not missing a single word, reading it twice straight through. During reading, that village in memory that had become distant and blurred became clear again in her mind. In a trance, she seemed to see again a youth with thick eyebrows and big eyes, sturdy build, face black with red tones, wearing a straw hat, shouldering a hoe, towel wrapped around his neck, striding through colorful fields. The entire evening, Murong Chu studied Ma La's speech outline. As a scholar always concerned with China's rural issues, she felt this text under 2,000 characters provided new information exceeding those papers of tens of thousands of characters. Originally holding no interest in this forum's content, she suddenly filled with anticipation for Ma La's speech, very much hoping to immediately meet Ma La, exchange views with him on topics involved in the speech draft. What Murong Chu never expected, due to large-scale riots suddenly erupting in Yanhe County town the next day, not only disrupting the entire summit forum agenda, but alarming the whole province and even the nation, making this obscure small county overnight become the focus of world attention. Chapter 23. The true financial backer of this conference was Gu Chaoyang. Ding Yuping merely played an intermediary role. When large-scale riots erupted in Yanhe County town, the conference at Yanhe Guest House proceeded as usual. Due to Yanhe County Police implementing strict blockades around the hotel the previous day, scholars and professors attending the conference knew nothing of the street riots occurring. This morning's meeting divided into 2 parts. One part continued yesterday's academic topics. Scholars held group discussions. The second part was the Chinese Sociology Annual Conference's council meeting, voting to elect new president and vice presidents. Like previous elections, candidates were predetermined long ago. Submitting them to council members for discussion before formal voting was just going through the motions. Only Zhuang Dingxian sat on the podium. He was both today's council executive chairman and sole candidate for new president. There were 8 candidates for new vice presidents. Murong Chu saw her name prominently listed first. Just as Wu Yan had revealed 2 days ago, He Wei indeed didn't appear on the vice president candidate list. Though knowing this result beforehand, a shadow still passed through Murong Chu's heart. She looked around the meeting room, finally finding He Wei's shadow in an inconspicuous corner. That bookish face showed no expression at this moment. Seemingly, the candidate list already distributed to everyone had no effect on him, an appearance of not contending with the world. Murong Chu suddenly felt, had she been too harsh toward He Wei before? A trace of guilt again rose in Murong Chu's heart. She produced an impulse, wanting to do something to compensate for possible harm her self-esteem might have caused He Wei. So Murong Chu pondered, took out a ballpoint pen, wrote a note. President Zhuang, if an outstanding scholar like Professor He Wei isn't even a vice president candidate, I feel even less qualified to be listed. Please remove my name from the list. Thank you. Murong Chu. After writing, Murong Chu handed the note to Wu Yan beside her, asking her to pass it to Zhuang Dingxian. Wu Yan glanced at those words on the note, her face showing surprised expression. She leaned close to Murong Chu's ear, quietly saying, "Big sister, if not for you, whether this conference could even be held is questionable. President Zhuang privately thanked you several times to me. You doing this, aren't you making him lose face? Besides, you being vice president, what does it have to do with He Wei? Is dragging yourself in worth it?" Wu Yan's meaning obviously hoped Murong Chu would retract the note, but her words instead made Murong Chu's heart more resolute, without any wavering intention. Wu Yan could only shake her head, appearing helpless as she took that small note toward the podium. Murong Chu saw when Zhuang Dingxian received the note from Wu Yan and glanced at it. His face immediately turned eggplant purple. Just then, sudden clamor came from outside the meeting room. The meeting room was also affected. People quietly discussed, buzzing sounds forming a piece. Initially, Murong Chu thought it was that small note she'd handed Zhuang Dingxian causing the reaction. But before long, Director Zeng from Yanhe County Government Office responsible for conference affairs hurried into the meeting room, whispered a few sentences to Zhuang Dingxian on the podium. Zhuang's expression grew tense. He immediately walked out of the meeting room quickly with Director Zeng. Originally sitting on the podium, Yanhe County Magistrate Ding Yupeng had also long since disappeared. Just as Murong Chu felt puzzled, Wu Yan, who'd just gone out to use the toilet, returned to her seat, quietly telling her, "Big sister, something big happened." Murong Chu was startled. What happened? Large-scale riots broke out in Yanhe County. Now people are everywhere on the streets, not only surrounding the county party committee and government, but many people rushed into our guest house, saying they wanted to reveal the truth to professors and scholars attending the summit forum. What exactly is it about? Murong Chu felt completely confused. Seems Chufeng Group air pollution caused deaths. Common people are dissatisfied with the government protecting Chufeng Group. Dead people's families carried coffins to Chufeng Group and county committee compound entrances. People even smashed shops, overturned several police cars. Yanhe's local police force isn't enough. The province dispatched police support, Wu Yan said. The schedule even arranged tomorrow morning visiting Chufeng Group, noon banqueting all conference delegates. Heh, now it's all ruined. Hearing Wu Yan's words, Murong Chu couldn't help gasping. That evening, Murong Chu was in her Yanhe guest house room watching provincial TV evening news report on the riot incident that occurred in Yanhe County during the day when she suddenly received a call from daughter Lulu. "Mom, are you still in Yanhe now?" Murong Chu asked puzzledly, "How did you know?" Never mind how I know. Quickly go to People's Livelihood Net. We're the first website to report Yanhe riots. People's Livelihood Net was the website Lulu and Kwang Sibei ran. Murong Qiu occasionally browsed it. It mostly reported grassroots people's rights protection news, large information volume, very popular. Some articles had quite sharp viewpoints, often touching on sensitive current affairs topics. It had already become a fairly well-known website nationally. After finishing the call with Lulu, Murong Qiu opened her laptop. Just logging onto People's Livelihood Net, a striking headline immediately caught her eye. Strange disease death victims' families carry coffins in protest. Yanhe erupts in large-scale public demonstration. Following were images after images of riot scenes, banners standing like flags, black, sinister coffins, overturned police cars, smashed shops, police wielding electric batons, fleeing crowds, plus 2 images of demonstrating masses rushing into Yanhe guest house, revealing the riot incident truth to professors and scholars attending the National Sociology Association Summit Forum. Both articles and images were credited People's Livelihood Net special correspondent reporting from Yanhe scene. Though both Central TV and Provincial TV that evening broadcast this sudden incident in Yanhe, Murong Qiu was still amazed at People's Livelihood Net's boldness in revealing riot truths. Some content involved Chufeng Group's serious pollution problems, plus Yanhe County government's long-term protection, suppressing victims' legitimate demands. These were all issues official news reports hadn't touched. The public opinion effects this would trigger after disclosure were predictable. A thought flashed through Murong Qiu's mind. If Lulu knew Chufeng Group's actual investor was her father, Gu Chaoyang, would she still disclose this content? She suddenly wanted to call her daughter, have her immediately remove this so-called Yanhe riot incident truth. But when her daughter's face, though still somewhat childish yet increasingly mature, clearly floated into her mind, Murong Qiu again hesitated. Yes, her daughter was now a news website practitioner. Whether regarding life or society, she had independent views. Moreover, beside her was that rebellious Kwang Sibei. Murong Qiu picked up her phone, then put it down. She felt somewhat regretful. Perhaps from the start, she shouldn't have sought out Ding Yuping, having Yanhe host this inexplicable summit forum. After arriving in Yanhe, she learned the funding for the summit forum came not from Yanhe County government, but from Gu Chaoyang's investment in Chufeng Group. In other words, the true financial backer of this conference was Gu Chaoyang. Ding Yuping merely played an intermediary role. She had a feeling of being deceived. Murong Qiu, who had always refused to accept any support from her ex-husband, discovered she ultimately hadn't escaped that enormous network Gu Chaoyang wove with money. She suddenly produced an impulse. Immediately break free from this invisible network, go anywhere, as long as she could leave here. The next day was the Summit Forum's closing ceremony. The candidate list hadn't changed one bit due to Murong Qiu's opposition and questioning. If so, she'd rather choose to exit this boring game. This is my right, she thought. Early in the morning, Murong Qiu picked up her travel bag, left Yanhe guest house, hailed a taxi on the street, and headed for Shenhuangzhou. Chapter 24. She thought of herself 30 years ago, having just come from a big city to this remote village beside the Jingjiang, her head full of revolutionary romanticism. When Murong Qiu took the taxi to Shenhuangzhou, approaching the embankment house with the windmill, she saw a fashionably dressed girl reading on the second-floor terrace. That windmill, having been repeatedly painted with tung oil, presented a dignified bronze color. Under sunlight, every blade glittered golden, dazzling to the eyes. Almost no wind, the windmill's blades remained motionless. Viewed from afar, it looked like an impressionist oil painting. Village, embankment, house with windmill. Oh, Shenhuangzhou, I've finally returned, Murong Qiu repeated in her heart over and over, her eyes involuntarily blurring. 30 years, stars shifted, things changed, people different. She was no longer that girl with pigtails from back then. Everything before her made her feel strange. So much so she doubted whether she'd come to the wrong place or had really lived in this village. Murong Chu, carrying her travel bag, stood on the grass-covered embankment, silently watching the windmill, the girl, and sunlight, like appreciating a real oil painting. Her gaze fell on the girl's face. The girl's clothing clashed with the surrounding environment, just as the rooftop windmill clashed with the surroundings. But the temperament she revealed had a highly compatible relationship with this scene. What amazed her even more, the girl's face gave her a déjà vu feeling, as if she'd seen her somewhere before. Even more incredible, she thought of herself 30 years ago, having just come from a big city to this remote village beside the Jingjiang, her head full of revolutionary romanticism's poetic sentiments. Only back then, she didn't have shoulder-length hair but wore 2 small pigtails. Just then, the girl looked up, discovering Murong Chu. She obviously realized this city-dressed, distinguished middle-aged woman was quietly sizing her up. Her face reddened slightly, as if someone had glimpsed some secret. Appearing somewhat unhappy, she pouted, standing up from the chair. "Who are you looking for?" Murong Chu said, "I'm looking for Ma La." "Who are you? Why are you looking for him?" The girl's string of interrogations left Murong Chu not knowing how to answer. The girl's vigilant gaze made Murong Chu unable to guess her identity. Was she Ma La's daughter, or— "My name is Murong Chu," she said. The girl looked at Murong Chu, her gaze somewhat unusual. She stood stunned for a moment before putting down the book in her hands. "Oh, old Ma is working in the peach orchard. Wait here. I'll call him for you." She walked downstairs, lifting her long legs running onto the embankment. In the blink of an eye, she'd flipped over the embankment and disappeared. When Murong Chu saw Ma La, his hands and body still bore leaves and dust from the peach orchard. 30 years ago, when Murong Chu left Shenhuangzhou, Ma La was still an elementary student, simple, sensitive, somewhat shy. Those eyes, beautiful as a girl's, always avoided her, not liking to talk. This was completely unlike his brother Ma Qi. That Shenhuangzhou Brigade Youth League branch secretary and 4th team captain, though only having elementary school education, spoke eloquently, very good at debate. His voice was also so good. Singing "We Walk on the Great Road" was magnificent, sonorous, powerful. Ma La differed from his brother. He loved reading. Not only reading books she'd lent Ma Ke, he'd finished reading all the books she'd brought from Wuhan. After returning to Wuhan, she discovered Liu Bei had given her that copy of The Song of Youth. After lending it to Ma La, he still hadn't returned it. However, the Ma La before her made Murong Chu feel so strange. This stubbled, middle-aged man carried a mixed scent of green grass and earth. The round-necked t-shirt on his body had 2 holes worn near the neck, trouser legs rolled up to his knees, hair messy as a pile of straw. This outfit easily made Murong Chu think of Ma Ke. Back then, every time Ma Ke returned from the crop fields, he always looked like this, shouldering a hoe, towels soaked with sweat draped around his neck, brownish-red face covered with pearl-like sweat. Yet his face showed no fatigue. His smile remained brilliant as clouds at sunset. Socialist laborers are always this careless and casual about their appearance. But precisely because of this, they possess a simple, robust, resolute quality. Their internal health surpasses any beauty skilled at adornment. This was diary Murong Chu wrote upon first meeting Ma Ke, representing that vanished era's young people's unique aesthetic taste. Damn! Why do I think of Ma Ke the moment I see him? Murong Chu secretly reproached herself. What is this? Clearly seeing a sturdy, strong autumn tree, yet your mind fills with spring saplings. She felt somewhat guilty about this inappropriate emotion. As if to hide this, she extended a hand. "Is it you, Ma La? I originally wanted to hear you speak at the Summit Forum, but didn't see you. Had no choice but to come to Shenhuangzhou to find you." But she only said half a sentence before something choked her throat. "Oh, Professor Murong!" Ma La hastily wiped his body, grasping the extended hand, seeming somewhat embarrassed. "I'd originally already reached the county seat. Who knew large-scale riots would break out? I was unexpectedly injured, delaying attending the conference speech at Yanhei Guest House. You didn't used to call me this, Murong-Chu joked. She saw Ma La's face redden slightly. How was this like a man over 40? In a trance, a clear voice rang in her ears. Sister Murong. Sister Murong. Sister Murong. The youth Ma La, with red scarf at his chest, nimbly crossed the crop-filled fields, running closer and closer. Sister Murong, your letter, from Wuhan! All sent-down youth laboring in the fields surged toward Ma La, scrambling to snatch that letter. Back then, regardless of whose family letter arrived, everyone had the right to open and publicly read it. That was sent-down youth's carnival. But Ma La held high that snow-white envelope, standing on tiptoes, insisting on delivering the letter to her hands. Afterward, Ma La quietly told her, "This is what my brother taught. Your letter can only be delivered to your hands, no one else." That proud tone, as if completing some arduous mission. These brothers cooperated so seamlessly. In wartime, they definitely make excellent messengers. Ma La obviously thought of that long-vanished address, Sister Murong. For so many years, this intimate address, like a beautiful song, had long echoed in his memory. But at this moment, he couldn't call it out, as if his throat had gone hoarse. Yet in his heart's depths, as if 1,000 throats were calling, Sister Murong, Sister Murong. Murong-Chu sensed Ma La's inner tension and confusion. She shifted her gaze to the sign hanging on the wall. Shenhuangzhou Tongshin Ecological Agriculture Planting and Sales Professional Cooperative, saying, "Your ecological rice is really delicious, plus the kiwi fruit, better than New Zealand kiwi fruit, but New Zealanders don't call it kiwi fruit, they call it kiwi." Murong-Chu had spent a year as a visiting scholar in New Zealand. Hey, kiwi, Ma La excitedly repeated this name. "So you received the kiwi fruit I sent?" "I received it. At first I didn't know who sent it. Later, seeing the package labeled Shenhuangzhou, I guessed it was you. If not you, who else would it be?" This latter sentence, Murong-Chu didn't know if she was asking Ma La or herself. Somehow Ma La's face suddenly reddened. Plus that Song of Youth book. Unexpectedly, after so many years, you still kept it. Murong-Chu, not noticing Ma La's face color, continued. "Back then, you really loved reading. You'd read through all the books I brought from Wuhan. Your brother said every book he borrowed from me, you read first." The first meal Murong-Chu ate after arriving at Shenhuangzhou was cooked by Ma La. That long-legged girl and a youth called Little Guai helped him around the stove. Several people cooperated very seamlessly, looking like a family. This meal Murong-Chu found very tasty. Not that Ma La's culinary skills were so good, but this authentic Shenhuangzhou-flavored meal made her feel as if returning to over 30 years ago when first sent down to Shenhuangzhou, initially eating rationed meals at villagers' homes. All vegetables from gardens, but sent-down youth felt they tasted better than meat or fish. Ma Ke also cooked excellently. Once, he caught a large bream in a water pit on the outer beach, inviting Murong-Chu and several sent-down youth to eat at his home. That plate of green pepper braised bream was Ma Ke's handiwork, incredibly fresh flavor. Coincidentally, today's dishes also included a plate of green pepper braised bream. That bream was Ma La's impromptu purchase from riverside fishermen. The flavor? Almost as delicious as Ma Ke's cooking back then. What amazed Murong-Chu wasn't just this meal, but this peculiar family. She'd already learned that long-legged girl who liked throwing small tantrums was called Tang Chao-er. She'd recently come from Wuhan to Shenhuangzhou. "Her health isn't great. She's recuperating here," Ma La told Murong-Chu this way. That taciturn but quick-witted Little Guai also had no blood relationship with Ma La. 3 people living together like a family. This made Murong-Chu feel somewhat incredible. Even more incredible was, of course, Tang Chao-er's background and experiences. Hearing Ma La say Tang Chao-er was his teacher's daughter, his teacher named Liu Yongjia, Murong-Chu couldn't believe such coincidences existed in the world. Tang Chao'er was actually cousin Yongjia's daughter who died long ago. For quite a while, Murong Chu couldn't speak a word. She remembered shortly after being sent down to Yanhe, she'd gone to the county seat to find cousin Yongjia but came up empty. At this moment, looking at this girl who so resembled cousin Yongjia, Murong Chu recalled what that woman Tang Lina had told her not long ago. She thought, this girl's skin is so fair and too thin. Seems her drug addiction is real. After eating, Murong Chu asked Tang Chao'er to accompany her walking by the river. The two left, heading up the embankment. From their first meeting, Tang Chao'er felt a special closeness to Murong Chu. Especially after learning Murong Chu and her father were cousins, that closeness intensified. By generation, she should call Murong Chu Auntie. She was full of curiosity about everything regarding Auntie. This was father's blood cousin. Grass grew thickly on the embankment slope. Stepping on it felt soft, as if covered with a carpet, making people want to roll around on the ground. Not far away, 2 cows grazed, 1 bull, 1 water buffalo. Seeing people approach, both simultaneously looked up, staring with eyes bigger than copper bells, motionless, watching them. A flock of sheep climbed up from the embankment's other side. The shepherd was a boy under 10. Behind the boy's bottom followed a not very tall but sturdy sheepdog. Seeing them standing on the embankment, the sheepdog vigilantly arched its front legs, barking, assuming a ready-to-pounce posture. The boy shouted once. It obediently tucked its tail, slipping over the embankment slope in a flash. Passing through the wave-breaking forest, they soon saw a kiwi orchard. The sun was setting west. River breezes brushed their faces. The outer beach was entirely shaded and cool. Setting sun's afterglow scattered star-like into the peach orchard, decorating each kiwi tree gracefully, especially enchanting. This is Old Ma's peach orchard. His kiwi fruit is in high demand online. Listening to Tang Chao'er's introduction, Murong Chu's heart filled with freshness and curiosity. Lush branches bore kiwi fruits big as plums, fuzzy like baby's cheeks, extremely lovable. She couldn't help leaning close as if to kiss them. Just then, she felt something tug her pants. Looking down, she was startled. 2 hedgehogs covered with spines crouched at her feet, extending fleshy little heads, curiously sizing her up. "Auntie, this is Big Lin and Little Lin. They're welcoming you," Tang Chao'er said while grabbing a handful of green beans from her pocket, scattering them on the ground. The 2 hedgehogs competed to eat. Tang Chao'er grabbed another handful of green beans, calling, "Little Lin, come here." That smaller hedgehog stopped competing, rushing before Tang Chao'er, pecking green beans from her outstretched palm. Tang Chao'er's hand felt a bit ticklish from pecking. She giggled continuously. "When I first came, I was scared seeing Big Lin and Little Lin," Tang Chao'er said while laughing. "But now, if I don't come daily to feed them, I feel something's missing. These 2 little guys really like me. Sometimes when I stroll by the river, they follow behind like 2 bodyguards." Watching Chao'er's happy expression, Murong Chu couldn't help asking, "You quite like it here, right?" "At first I wasn't too accustomed, but gradually it got better." Chao'er hummed agreement. "The air's good here. Environment's also good. Every day falling asleep to river wave sounds, waking to bird calls in the wave-breaking forest, truly like a paradise." "Are you so happy you've forgotten Shu?" Murong Chu deliberately teased. "If not for Mom calling every few days, I really wouldn't want to go back," Chao'er said, glancing at Murong Chu, counter-asking, "Auntie, don't you like it here?" "Of course I like it. When I worked as sent-down youth here, I was even younger than you now." Murong Chu smiled. "Back then, I even wrote a blood letter, vowing to take root here my whole life." "Then why did you leave?" "Why?" Murong Chu said thoughtfully. "Because the era changed. Also because of one person." Tang Chao'er wanted to get to the bottom of it, but seeing a trace of sadness pass across Murong Chu's face, she stopped talking. Yes, at that moment, Murong Chu couldn't help thinking of Ma Ke. If Ma Ke hadn't had his life taken by that great fire, would their relationship have continued? Back then, among sent-down youth, she wasn't the only one establishing romantic relationships with local young men. But later, with the return to city wave beginning, all without exception aborted. Moreover, there was Gu Chaoyang who'd persistently pursued her. How enormously the era affected individual lives, Murongqiu thought. But despite this, she didn't want to deny that period of feeling between herself and Ma Ke. Love cannot be forgotten. She recalled a novel title she'd read in university. Regardless, the most precious period of time in her life had forever followed Ma Ke, remaining on this land. After feeding the hedgehogs, they walked toward the river. The riverbank was overgrown with wild grass, thorny bushes. River water still flowed unhurriedly as before. A breeze messed up Murongqiu's hair. The further forward she walked, the younger she felt. Time seemed to have reversed. She again saw her adolescent self, having just come from Wuhan to this remote village by the Jingjiang, wearing a fitted grass-green student uniform, 2 pigtails, running and jumping on riverside grass. Bell-like laughter accompanied Russian song Katyusha, echoing across the empty riverbank. Just when pear blossoms bloom everywhere, mist veils the river so enchantingly, Katyusha walks on the steep shore, her song like bright spring light. After work in summer, sent-down youth would come to the river to swim. After laboring all day, soaking bodies in cool river water, playing a while, all fatigue unconsciously disappeared. Initially, only male sent-down youth went in the water. Female sent-down youth were just spectators on shore. Precisely with these female spectators, male sent-down youth competed, each showing off swimming skills in the water. Later, a female sent-down youth said, "Great leader Chairman Mao teaches us, Yangtze water is deep with swift currents, perfect for tempering bodies. Women hold up half the sky. Male sent-down youth can swim. Why can't we?" Once these words emerged, other female sent-down youth, as if receiving pre-battle mobilization orders, responded one after another, joining the swimming ranks. They selected a backwater bay downstream from male sent-down youth to enter the water. First, because water flow here was gentler. Second, because on shore stood an abandoned broken brick kiln, perfect for their changing room. Every time after swimming, changing clothes in the brick kiln, they were always panicked like thieves, fearing being peeped at. Similar incidents did occur. Murongqiu encountered it too. That time, while changing clothes in the brick kiln, she always felt someone was peeping at her. But the brick kiln was only so big. Forget a person, even a dog couldn't hide. Moreover, a female sent-down youth stood guard at the kiln entrance. How could anyone peep? But intuition made her suddenly look up. Sure enough, a pair of shiny black eyes at the kiln top flashed and disappeared. She was so scared she quickly covered her body with clothes but didn't shout, "Catch the hooligan," like other female sent-down youth, because those were a pair of familiar adolescent eyes. Previously, at Yangtze Commission-affiliated middle school and city youth palace pool, Murongqiu had learned swimming. Swimming in the Yangtze was her first time. That backwater bay they selected appeared calm on the surface, but underwater currents surged, whirlpools multiplied, actually very dangerous. That time, she carelessly got sucked into a whirlpool. In panic, she desperately flailed. Finally, surfacing with difficulty, she discovered she'd already been pushed by surging waves into the rapids. Watching herself drift farther from shore, other female sent-down youth on shore also panicked, calling her name. She was gripped by unprecedented terror. Another wave struck. She choked down several mouthfuls of water. Her limbs immediately lost strength. She could only drift downstream with the current, her body gradually sinking. At the moment about to sink into water, a vague thought flashed through her mind. Am I going to die? When she regained consciousness, she found herself lying on riverside sand. A group of male and female sent-down youth surrounded her, faces full of anxiety. Seeing her open her eyes, they all simultaneously sighed with relief, joyfully calling, "She's awake! Murongqiu's awake!" Only then did Murongchu see Brigade Youth League Secretary Ma Qi standing soaking wet behind the crowd. Later she learned that after being swept into rapids, several sent-down youth competed to rescue her. But ultimately, it was Ma Ke who saved her. At that time, you'd already sunk down. Waves were so fierce. Several of us thrashed around in the water but couldn't find you. Someone later described the scene to Murongchu. Right then, Ma Ke happened to pass by shore. He jumped in the water without even removing clothes. In the blink of an eye, he swam before us. He dove down. Over a minute passed before he fished you up. If not for Ma Ke, you'd really have been in danger. For a long time, that sturdy, upright figure kept floating into Murongchu's mind. When they first arrived from Wuhan at Heku Commune, Ma Ke greeted them at the commune compound. This Shenhuangzhou Brigade Youth League secretary had a square face, broad nose, thick eyebrows, big eyes, crew-cut hair, sturdy build like an iron tower. Though Jingjae had just passed and the weather still had some chill, he wore only a grass-green tank top. Several large red characters "Agriculture learns from Dajai" were very striking. But even more eye-catching were those two muscular arms, sun-tanned black with red tones, like coated with tongue oil. "Sent down youth comrades, you answered Chairman Mao's great call to go to countryside to settle. On behalf of all poor and lower-middle peasants of Shenhuangzhou Brigade, I welcome you." After half a sentence of opening remarks, he choked up, face flushing red. Later, under Ma Ke's leadership, sent-down youth lined up neatly, emerging from the commune compound toward Shenhuangzhou Brigade. On the plain, crisscrossing paths, rolling wheat waves, a thriving scene. Sent-down youth sang revolutionary songs all the way, the atmosphere quite heated. Someone proposed, "Comrade Ma Ke, can you sing us a song?" Ma Ke readily agreed. He sang "Horse, slow down your pace. Horse, slow down your pace, slow down. I want to fully appreciate this enchanting scenery. Fertile land seems soaked in oil, 10,000 mu of good fields like paved with gold. Never seen green mountains dripping emerald beautiful as paintings. Never seen people in paintings celebrating harvest. Never seen green grass thick as silk carpets. Never seen on silk carpets horses and cows released. Never seen amid 10,000 greens new villages. Never seen beneath betel nut trees, bamboo houses, bamboo houses." His voice was rich, resonant, reaching the clouds. Sent-down youth hadn't expected this seemingly honest, introverted rural youth sang so well. All applauded and cheered. Later, Murongchu learned he wasn't just Brigade Youth League secretary but had voluntarily taken on 4th Team production captain duties. 4th Team was Shenhuangzhou Brigade's famous backward team. Annual production never improved. Team members' income annually ranked last in the entire brigade. Reportedly, after Ma Ke took office, at the production team's full member meeting, he issued a military order to brigade secretary, striving to remove 4th Team's backward label early. One day not removing it, one day not marrying. Murongchu remembered her first time laboring in fields was weeding cotton. Due to nervousness, the hoe in her hands completely wouldn't obey. In just a short while, she'd hoed down several cotton seedlings. She blamed herself, crouching on the ground, crying. Ma Ke saw, came over teaching her hand by hand the correct posture for using a hoe. Later, she learned planting rice, cutting wheat, and other farm work. When Murongchu left 4th Team to become music teacher at Brigade Elementary School, 4th Team had already removed its backward label. Before long, she became Brigade Youth League committee member. She remembered at one Youth League committee meeting, someone joked with Ma Ke, "Ma Ke, 4th Team's backward label is removed. Should you marry now?" Before finishing, this caused uproarious laughter. Ma Ke's face also reddened like a rooster's comb. During that period, Murongchu was reading the novel Bright Sunny Day depicting rural life. She felt Ma Ke's character somewhat resembled the protagonist Xiao Changchun. But if Ma Ke was Xiao Changchun, who was Zhao Shuhong? This suddenly emerging thought made Murongchu's face hot, heart racing. After the drowning incident, Murongchu and Ma Ke's contact gradually increased. Whenever free, she'd find Ma-Ke to learn swimming. Ma-Ke often borrowed books from her to read. Interestingly, every time borrowing and returning books went through his brother Ma-La. Less than half a year passed. Ma-Ke had borrowed all books she'd brought from Wuhan once through, but later she discovered Ma-Ke hadn't actually read every book. As both Brigade Youth League secretary and 4th team captain, working from dawn to dusk every day, he was really too busy. Instead, his brother Ma-La conscientiously finished reading those books. At that time, Ma-La was in 5th grade elementary school. Murong-Chu was the school's music teacher. Every time seeing this book-loving youth whose composition grades ranked first in class, she couldn't help wanting to kiss those shiny black eyes. Ma-Ke also had a pair of jet black eyes, only those were a mature man's eyes. The riverbank remained so vast, breezes still so soft, but in Murong-Chu's eyes, everything had completely changed. Rustling autumn wind is here again. The world has changed. She recalled this line of Mao Zedong's poetry, her heart filled with autumnal feeling. What puzzled her, she and Tang Chaoer walked along the rugged riverbank for quite a while, yet never found that abandoned, broken brick kiln. The scene of hiding fearfully in the brick kiln with other female sent-down youth changing clothes seemed right before her eyes. She suddenly realized, after 30 years of river water scouring, the current riverbed had pushed 10+ meters toward shore. That broken brick kiln had long been swept into rolling waves, vanished forever. Vanishing together was her bitter yet not unsweet youth. The two began walking back. As they neared the peach orchard, Tang Chaoer suddenly called, "Look, that person on the river!" Murong-Chu stood on a dirt ridge at the shore, looking toward the river. On the broad river surface, someone was swimming toward the river center. Water flowed swiftly. Plus, a cargo ship had just passed. Waves rose and fell, one higher than the next. That person appeared and disappeared amid peaks and troughs, seeming ready to be swallowed at any moment. At this time, the sun had already set west. Setting sun's afterglow reflected the river surface in fiery red. That person seemed like a blazing torch, cleaving wave after wave of rapids, stubbornly moving toward the river center sandbar, getting closer and closer. Murong-Chu felt those powerfully swinging arms resembled someone. She murmured, "Is it him?" "It's him! It's Old Ma!" Tang Chaoer clapped excitedly. "Old Ma swims a round trip on the river every evening. See that sandbar? Old Liu is my father." Tang Chaoer hesitated before answering. Back then, Old Liu brought several students to swim by the river every weekend. Know what? Old Liu won the university swimming championship in college. Murong-Chu wasn't accustomed to Tang Chaoer calling men, regardless of age or relationship, with old as prefix. Hearing this child say, Old Liu, Old Ma, one after another, she always felt somewhat jarring. She recalled that ivy-covered old villa, beautiful aunt, plus cousin Yongjia's handsome face. She thought, next time perhaps I should bring Kaoer to the old villa to acknowledge her ancestry. Murong-Chu and Tang Chaoer stood on shore gazing at the river, waiting for Ma-La to swim back toward shore. The sky was about to darken. Setting sun cast down final rose-colored afterglow, then silently sank to Earth's edge. The just brilliant river surface instantly dimmed considerably. Sky began changing from blue to black. Both riverbanks' beaches, wave-breaking forests, and embankments also gradually became blurred and indistinct. Night curtain like a great net was silently casting down from all directions. Ma-La began swimming back. Earlier, swimming from shore to river center sandbar, he'd consumed excessive energy, so now obviously slowed considerably. Water was somewhat cold. His limbs began becoming less obedient. Arm-swinging strength obviously weakened. Underwater currents also seemed to take the opportunity to launch attacks, continuously pulling and battering him, releasing wave after wave of strong whirlpools, attempting to sink him to the river bottom. He, of course, couldn't so easily submit. He'd grown up beside this river. Since childhood, he'd been accustomed to its smell, thoroughly familiar with its temperament. Moreover, he'd once had 2 excellent teachers. All his skills battling water came from those 2 people. They not only taught him swimming techniques, but also, through their respective deaths, taught him how to settle down in this world. Neither be a purely material person nor a purely spiritual person. Regardless, learn to love. But have I learned to love? This doubt had always hovered in his heart, making him perplexed. Sometimes he felt he hadn't grown up, like a stopped clock, forever frozen in his adolescence, from emotions to body, both alike. Whenever he thought of Sister Murong's wet body glimpsed at the broken brick kiln top, he felt his face burn, heart race. A huge sense of shame followed him like a ghost. Brother's death not only didn't lighten this shame in his heart, but intensified it, continuously escalating with time's passage and age's growth. After 40, though his body reached middle age, psychologically he still seemed that 14-year-old youth. All these years, his heart still held that Sister Murong. No other woman could occupy a place in his heart. A philosopher said shame is another manifestation of love. But if unable to emerge from shame, love cannot receive sufficient nourishment to grow. Such shame is just pathological. His and Sister Murong's repeated near misses verified how stubborn this pathology was. So when Murong Chu appeared before him as if falling from heaven, his first reaction was at a loss, not daring to face the other party directly. That almost innate shame immediately gripped him, making him unable to breathe, as if about to suffocate. Several times, Ma La felt he was about to sink. He even choked down 2 mouthfuls of water. But he always changed postures at critical moments, from freestyle, breaststroke changing to backstroke. This was a trick brother and teacher Liu taught him. Whenever physical strength failed, this method proved repeatedly effective. He lay on the river surface, drifting with currents, limbs not moving at all as if asleep. Several stars in the overhead sky twinkled like diamonds. Among them, 2 brightest stars truly resembled Sister Murong's eyes. A question suddenly popped into his mind. Was that Sister Murong, who carried the pleasant snow cream scent, the same person as this current Professor Murong Chu with crow's feet already climbing her eye corners? Was I the same person as that youth from 30-plus years ago? Was today's Shen Huangzhou still that Shen Huangzhou from 30 years ago? If not, where did my shame come from? A strong, warm current seemed injected into Mala's heart. His originally heavy body suddenly became much lighter. His entire being seemed reborn, transformed into a completely new person. Mala felt his physical strength beginning to recover. His arms again became strong and powerful. He readjusted his posture, swimming toward shore. He vaguely saw Murong Chu and Tang Chaoer standing on shore. A sudden impulse arose in his heart. Quickly swim ashore, tightly embrace them together like embracing his own family. That night, Murong Chu and Tang Chaoer slept in Mala's upstairs study. The room gave off a strong herbal medicine smell. April nights were cool and pleasant, frog calls continuous, night dew like water. Wind intermittently beat against windows, bringing waves of wheat grain-filling fragrance. The entire evening, Tang Chaoer kept talking. "I take Chinese medicine daily," she said. The prescription was written by a village doctor named Wu Daokun that old Ma found, reportedly a hereditary secret formula. "I've taken Chinese medicine for nearly a month. My health is much better than before. Eating is more appetizing than before. I rarely lose my temper as before," she said. "Usually, old Ma and little Guayer are busy in the orchard. I either stroll by the river outer beach or stay alone in the upstairs room reading, going online." One day, I discovered old Ma's book manuscript in progress, written in a hardcover notebook, densely packed, filling most of the book. Reading it was so laborious for me. Writing it must have been even more laborious for him. I told old Ma, "I'll help you input the manuscript into the computer. Later when you revise, it'll be much more convenient." I also suggested he write directly on computer from now on. What modern writer still writes by hand? Old Ma was very happy hearing the word writer. I'm no writer. His modesty is really cute, not at all like a man in his 40s. Tang Chao-er kept talking. Murong Chu listened without a sound, like hearing a beautiful fairy tale. Later, she talked about cousin Yongjia, Tang Chao-er's father. Murong Chu revealed everything she knew, including that ivy-covered old villa. She knew she actually knew very little about cousin Yongjia. Comparatively, Ma La was perhaps the person who truly understood cousin. Old Ma wants me to return to Wuhan with you tomorrow, but I haven't finished typing his manuscript, Tang Chao-er said, her voice carrying a trace of melancholy. Are you reluctant to leave Shenhuangzhou? Murong Chu deliberately asked. Don't you want to see that old villa your father left you soon? Auntie, I like this place, as if I grew up here in a past life. Plus, old Ma. Not just because he helped me quit drugs, giving me new life. Over 2 years ago, when old Ma found me at the drug rehabilitation center, I already regarded him as family. In my heart, old Ma is old Liu's incarnation, or they're simply the same person. Being with him is being with old Liu. I'm afraid if I leave him, father will become a vague, abstract term. Also, part of my father's ashes are buried here. Tang Chao-er's words made Murong Chu's heart tremble slightly. Old Ma's book isn't finished yet. After finishing, it'll definitely be a remarkable book. Tang Chao-er once again mentioned that book. Auntie, do you believe it? Murong Chu smiled wryly. I haven't even seen it. How can I believe? Let me recite a passage for you. I can recite many passages from memory. Go ahead. All right, listen. That great fire not only burned 4th Team's warehouse and my brother Ma Qi's life, but also destroyed his and Sister Murong's love. Once upon a time, their love was praised among poor and lower-middle peasants and sent-down youth, making many young men and women envious. It even appeared in county and provincial newspapers, comparing them with outstanding educated youth like Xing Yanzi, Zhu Kejia. If not for this sudden fire, I believe my brother and Sister Murong would definitely have become spouses, becoming the world's happiest couple. Because I knew they truly loved each other. In my eyes, Sister Murong was a fairy descended from heaven. She not only let brother taste love's sweetness, but also brought youth and beauty to all Shenhuangzhou. This beauty didn't belong just to one person, but to everyone and that era. After that fire, dear Sister Murong collapsed as if struck by lightning. For a long time, her face was ashen, listless. I sensed that while losing love, we would also lose her. This was an inescapable fate, for individuals and for all Shenhuangzhou. 2 months later, Chairman Mao passed away. The entire village's adults and children cried. Of course, some people were secretly pleased. Before long, Sister Murong plus other sent-down youth successively left Shenhuangzhou, returning to the city. After they left, I felt the village was empty, my heart also empty. An era ended. My brother Ma Qi and Sister Murong's aborted love was that vigorous era's sacrificial offering. This year, my intellect and body seemed to also stop developing and growing. I became a child who'd never grow up, right up to today. Auntie, are you listening? I'm listening, Murong Chu answered, her voice somewhat choked. Next day at dawn, Murong Chu awoke. Seeing Tang Chao-er still sleeping, she tiptoed out of bed, leaving alone. Passing another room, inside came a man's even snoring. This was Ma La's snore. The weather was somewhat overcast, all 4 directions misty with low visibility. Air extraordinarily fresh, as if sprinkled with mint. Morning breezes blew gently, carrying ripe wheat fragrance. On the embankment rose 1 or 2 cow-calf moos plus cowherd shouts, then returned to silence. Murong Chu paused briefly, then walked forward along the winding embankment. The ground was very damp. Before long, her shoes were wet with dew. Due to unclear goals, her steps appeared hesitant, as if she didn't know where she was going or couldn't determine the accurate location of where she wanted to go. The reason she walked forward was purely based on memory already blurred in her mind. Before she knew it, Murong Chu passed through a winding field ridge, arriving at a wild area. When she looked up, a grass-covered burial mound entered her view. Due to age, characters on the tombstone had become blurred and indistinct. She crouched down, extending her hand, bit by bit scraping mud from the characters. Gradually, that line of characters became clear. Murong-Chu stared at that line of characters on the tombstone. Tears suddenly filled her eyes. "Kezi, I've come to see you," she murmured. Kezi was Ma Qi's childhood name. "Please forgive me for only coming now. All these years, I've never had courage to face this tombstone, because it not only buried my first love, but also buried an era," she continued saying. "Kezi, from any angle you were an outstanding man. If you hadn't died, you'd similarly become a leader of today's era. Now such people are called successful people. But if truly so, your position in my heart wouldn't be as important as now. Kezi, is thinking this way somewhat cruel?" Her voice somewhat hesitant, but quickly became resolute. "Of course you wouldn't become such a person. Your personal qualities and that era's every element created you. You could only become yourself. This point I also saw in Ma La. You brothers are so similar yet so different. Is this the era's cause, or the era's miraculous craftsmanship? Or is this your misfortune or fortune?" She seemed to interrogate, slightly raising her voice. "Time passes quickly. The era we experienced has gone never to return, including you, Kezi. You've also been forgotten, even increasingly regarded by people as an incomprehensible fool. Only in my heart you remain forever so spirited, selflessly devoted to the public, full of ideals." As Murong-Chu spoke, she choked with sobs. Tears flowed down along eye-corner crow's feet. Just then, light rain began falling from the sky. Rainwater and tears mixed together, soaking her entire face. Somehow she felt the rain stopped. A strange yet familiar male scent came from somewhere. She felt somewhat dizzy. In a trance, she saw Ma Qi wearing a straw hat, holding a sickle, striding from golden wheat fields. "Kezi!" she involuntarily called out, opening her eyes, but she saw Ma La standing beside her, holding a blue umbrella for her. "Sister Murong, after Kaur got up and didn't see you, she anxiously searched upstairs and downstairs everywhere," Ma La said with a smile. "I figured you came here." That address, Sister Murong, made her heart leap. Turning her face, she looked at Ma La with surprise and joy. "Sister Murong, what did you just call me?" A girlish blush passed across her face. She felt Ma La's face smile almost identically to Ma Qi's. She couldn't distinguish whether the person before her was the brother or younger brother. At that moment, Murong-Chu heard the other person's heartbeat, steady, resolute, powerful, as if echoes of her long-vanished youth and first love. Chapter 25. It was precisely this confusion that activated an impulse long dormant in her heart. She could no longer continue staying in the academic circles reeking of decay. After old Yue transferred away, the sociology department got a new party secretary. Upon taking office, he immediately introduced new teacher assessment standards, tying every teacher's professional title evaluation and salary bonuses to project funding applications. Anyone who didn't meet standards would not be allowed to participate in that year's professional title and salary promotions. Those failing to meet standards for 3 consecutive years would not have their contracts renewed. Once the assessment standards were announced, they immediately caused an uproar in the sociology department. Many teachers raised objections, believing this turned universities into companies and teachers into salespeople. If this continues, everyone will spend all day soliciting project funds. Who'll have the energy for teaching and research? As department head, Murong-Chu had opposed this so-called reform measure from the start. But the new secretary, newly appointed and full of confidence, didn't take Murong-Chu's opinions seriously at all. On the 3rd day after the new teacher assessment standards were announced, Murong-Chu submitted a resignation report to the Humanities College. After resigning as sociology department head, Murong-Chu felt a sense of relief throughout her entire body. Weekend afternoon, as usual, she left home to walk around campus. Shortly after the beginning of autumn, the plane trees, Osmanthus trees, locust trees, and white magnolia trees on W University campus were like a group of women who'd removed their makeup. After shedding their splendid decorations, they revealed a mature charm completely different from spring and summer. The ground was covered with golden fallen leaves. Against the blue sky overhead, they created a profound, far-reaching artistic conception. Every time riding her bicycle to teach students, hearing the crunching sound of tires rolling over fallen leaves, Murongqiu's heart always produced ethereal thoughts. She remembered another afternoon, passing along a secluded path, just seeing the setting sun illuminating the woods on the opposite hillside brilliantly, glowing crimson red, as if aflame. Somehow she suddenly recalled Song Dynasty famous poet Zhang Yan's Sheng Sheng Man, composed for Gao Zhuye. Cold flowers, quiet affairs, an idler in the old garden, looking at the lush autumn colors together. Dividing roots with leaves, the empty green half wets the lotus clothes. Old sorrows of Yuan and Xiang rivers undiminished. Having gold, it is hard to cast lovesickness. But in drunkenness, rewriting the tie paper, not allowing spring to know, chatting to comfort the profound feelings of ancient intent, frequently pinning flowers on the short hat. Do not blame the slanting sunlight. Picking not much, laughing and forgetting to return all day. Let the fragrant path remain small, resembling East Mountain, resembling the eastern fence. Waiting to go into seclusion, afraid that nowadays it is not the Jin dynasty. What a line, waiting to go into seclusion, afraid that nowadays it is not the Jin dynasty. Murongqiu silently savored this verse, feeling her heart like a pebble submerged in water, cool, clear, serene. She wasn't a poet, but she distinctly felt a desolate beauty of things changed. People gone, years passed. The second day after Teacher's Day, Murongqiu received a call from Auntie Ju. Father's emphysema and heart disease had suddenly worsened. He'd been rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment. "Come quickly. If you're late, your dad will—" Auntie Ju only said half before choking with sobs. Murongqiu sensed Father's condition's seriousness. After finishing the call, she hastily packed and rushed straight to the bus stop at the campus entrance. When she reached Hankou Union Hospital, Father Murong Yuntian had already departed this world. Though Murong Yuntian's funeral was handled by the Yangtze Commission, as his only child, Murongqiu remained indispensable for major and minor matters during the mourning period. From leaders, colleagues, and relatives paying respects to the body farewell and memorial service, she remained by Father's coffin throughout, continuously receiving condolences from city leaders, plus Father's work unit leaders and colleagues. Only after Father's body was sent to the crematorium did she have time to catch her breath. Lulu didn't return to Wuhan until the second day after grandfather's cremation. When Mother Murongqiu called telling her grandfather had passed away, she and Kwang Xibei were interviewing elsewhere. After much difficulty, Lulu finally caught a train back to Wuhan. Lulu had been especially loved by grandfather since childhood. This time she hadn't even seen grandfather's final moments. Self-blame and grief made tears stream uncontrollably down her face the moment she saw grandfather's portrait. Days later, Murongqiu purchased a burial plot for Father at Wuchang Shimen Peak Cemetery. When Father's ashes were interred, only 3 people stood at the gravesite: Murongqiu, Lulu, and Auntie Ju. That day drizzled with fine rain. Dark clouds massed over the cemetery. Cold winds blew bleakly, a scene of desolation. Murongqiu stared at Father's portrait on the tombstone, recalling how recently Father had still worried about Yangtze Electromechanical Factory's future. Tears once again blurred her eyes. Murongqiu heard Auntie Ju's intermittent sobbing beside her. These past days, Auntie Ju's eyes hadn't stopped tearing, red as a rotten peach. Murongqiu knew well that though Auntie Ju and Father were only second spouses, they'd depended on each other for several years. Now, with Father gone, leaving Auntie Ju alone, quite pitiful. Murongqiu's heart couldn't help rising with a trace of compassion. but she quickly thought of Mother who died years ago. Thinking how parents could finally stay together, never to be separated, her heart produced a trace of consolation. On the road home from the cemetery, Lulu suddenly mentioned Father Gu Chaoyang. Dad said he couldn't personally come to condole grandfather. He asked me to buy a wreath on his behalf. Murong Chu said nothing. The countless kind words Father had spoken before her about Gu Chaoyang while alive. She thought, Father actually never understood what kind of person Gu Chaoyang really was, just as he might not truly understand this world. In this respect, wasn't she herself just like Father? Thinking this, a bitter smile passed across Murong Chu's face. Not long ago, she'd seen news in the Yangtze Daily about Yangtze Electromechanical Factory being acquired by Duke Company. The report said Provincial People's Congress Vice Director Han Peng, Vice Governor Liu Daqiang, Duke Company China Region Chief Executive Gu Chaoyang, and Yangtze Electromechanical Company Limited new board chairman Pan Xiaoping attended the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Lulu naturally couldn't read Mother's mood at this moment. Regarding entanglements between parents, she'd never understood from childhood to adulthood. Rather than calling this estrangement between parents and children, it was more a generation gap between two generations. She'd already grown up. When she possessed the ability to understand others, she lacked that mindset. For a long time, Lulu's entire thoughts were filled with her and Kwang Xibei's love, plus the website they'd poured their hearts into. Last year, for exposing Yanhe County Chufeng Group's pollution incident, People's Livelihood Net was banned by internet management departments. Initially, Kwang Xibei found friends to negotiate, trying to reopen the website. But news that friend revealed shocked both Kwang Xibei and Lulu. The person who requested internet management departments ban People's Livelihood Net through high-level channels was none other than Lulu's father, Gu Chaoyang. His previous offer to fund People's Livelihood Net naturally also went up in smoke. Lulu didn't believe this was true. She called Father. Gu Chaoyang frankly told her, "It's true!" Lulu was amazed. "Dad, why would you do this?" Gu Chaoyang said calmly, "Lulu, I did this for your own good. You don't know how dangerous what you're doing is. In China, nothing is more dangerous than interfering with politics. Except politics, Dad supports whatever you do and is willing to provide all conditions." Gu Chaoyang once again mentioned going abroad to Lulu. But Lulu ultimately didn't accept his opinion. Lulu's heart was clear. Father did this because People's Livelihood Net exposed Chufeng Group's pollution problems. Though this matter made Lulu feel somewhat apologetic before Father, regardless, she couldn't accept Father using this undermining method to interfere with and change her own life choices. Before long, Lulu and Kwang Xibei together accepted employment from a social organization, going to Yunnan to serve as news specialists for a large public welfare poverty alleviation activity. Upon receiving the appointment letter, Lulu told Mother her decision. This time, Murong Chu clearly stood on her daughter's side, formally acknowledging her relationship with Kwang Xibei. In an email reply to her daughter, she wrote one sentence, "Lulu, Mom supports everything you're doing now. I just want to tell you, this persistent energy of yours really resembles Mom when she was young." Lulu stayed home 2 days before going to Yunnan. Kwang Xibei was waiting for her in Kunming. According to plan, the two would travel up the New River together, once again going deep into Yi and Derung ethnic villages for a 3-month walking investigation. After completing this activity, the two planned to collaboratively write a large-scale social documentary work, tentatively titled On the Margins, at the Bottom. 2 days later, Murong Chu received an invitation from Tang Chao-er. Shortly after returning from Shenhuangzhou, Murong Chu had formally transferred cousin Liu Yongjia's old villa to Tang Chao-er. After getting the property deed, Tang Chao-er had a not insignificant argument with Mother Tang Liping. Tang Liping wanted the whole family to move into the villa, in her words, experience the lifestyle of Republican-era nobility. But Tang Chao-er disagreed. She had her own ideas. I don't want Tang Liping moving in. I'm preparing to open a children's vocal music training school at the old villa, she consulted Murong Chu. Auntie, what do you think? Murong Chu thought this was a good idea, repeatedly saying, good. She felt Cao Er, after returning from Shenhuangzhou, seemed to have suddenly grown up considerably. Now, after several months of preparation, Tang Cao Er's children's music training school was finally about to officially open. Regardless, Murong Chu had to go express congratulations. It happened to be a weekend. The bus stop at the school gate was crowded with people, all students going downtown to play. Murong Chu waited a while but couldn't catch a bus. She had no choice but to take a taxi. When Murong Chu reached that old villa at Tanhua Alley, Tang Chaoer's Children's Music Training Center opening ceremony had already begun. The opening ceremony was held in the first-floor living room. Inside and outside the living room were packed with adults and children. When Murong Chu entered, the District Education Bureau leader had just finished speaking. A professor from Wuhan Conservatory of Music began talking. Tang Chaoer, hosting the opening ceremony, saw Murong Chu and came through the crowd, warmly grasping her hand, saying quietly, "Auntie, would you say a few words to parents and children later? People should have self-knowledge. I'm completely an outsider to music. Better not show off here." Murong Chu smiled, simultaneously sizing up Tang Chaoer. Seeing her wearing pure white formal dress, graceful and elegant, radiant with light, her face brimming with childlike joy, compared to the Tang Chaoer seen a year ago, she seemed like a completely different person. Murong Chu discovered this old villa had also completely changed. Exterior and interior walls were painted with colorful murals in myriad forms. Flowers and plants in the courtyard were all newly planted, giving off refreshing fragrance. Indoor tables, chairs, and musical equipment were bright and dazzling, filled with rich fairy tale atmosphere and artistic air. Looking at everything before her, another scene floated into Murong Chu's mind. Old-style doors and windows, paint-peeling floors, ivy on exterior walls, grapevines in the courtyard, vegetable garden full of melons and fruits, crab-apple tree with swaying branches and leaves, plus butterflies and dragonflies flitting through flowers. She seemed to hear Mother and Auntie whispering privately in the house, saying endless, intimate words. She herself tirelessly caught dragonflies in the flower clusters, often getting hands full of mud yet catching nothing. Cousin Yongjia, home on vacation, wore white Western-style shorts, his hair parted, holding a thick novel, The Red and the Black, lying on a bamboo chair under the grape arbor as if asleep. For so many years, this scene, like an eternally unfaded oil painting, had always remained stored deep in Murong Chu's mind. "Auntie, what are you thinking about?" Tang Chaoer's voice came to Murong Chu's ear. Only then did she discover the opening ceremony had ended. Only she and Tang Chaoer remained in the old villa. "Oh, I recalled childhood, often coming here to play. The first time I saw Cousin Yongjia, your father, was also here," Murong Chu said, as if talking to herself. "Back then, how handsome he was, like a male protagonist walking out of a foreign novel." Murong Chu's absorbed expression obviously made Tang Chaoer feel somewhat surprised. Regarding the father she'd never met, she still couldn't obtain a three-dimensional complete image, because until now, everything about Liu Yongjia she'd obtained from another man. To her, that man seemed more intimate, more tangible. "Auntie, I often think about those days spent at Shenhuangzhou recently," Tang Chaoer said softly. "Without those days, perhaps there wouldn't be today's me." But Murong Chu distinctly heard the unspoken subtext in Tang Chaoer's words. What she actually wanted to say was, "Without old Ma, there wouldn't be today's me." "More than once, I've dreamed of that small village by the Jingjiang, that peach orchard, and of course, old Ma." Tang Chaoer looked at Murong Chu. "Auntie, don't you think he's a strange person?"
"Yes, very strange," Murong Chu murmured. "So strange he seems not to be living in our era."
"But I just can't forget him. I really want to go to Shenhuangzhou again someday, see old Ma, little Guire, plus those 2 little hedgehogs. Tang Chao-er spoke, then suddenly shifted her gaze to her. Auntie, haven't you thought this way? Murong Chu momentarily didn't know how to answer. She felt her inner heart like a turbulent river surface, difficult to calm. Yet before Tang Chao-er, she still tried hard to hide something. This made her realize the generation gap between herself and young people. But she immediately questioned herself. Didn't I walk from youth? But so what? Age was definitely not the decisive factor changing fate. The era's sky relative to the individual's sky is like Mount Tai pressing down. She recalled a poet's verse. Recently, how had she become as sentimental as Li Qingzhao? Auntie, why are you crying? Tang Chao-er said softly, handing over a tissue. Murong Chu embarrassedly said, "Oh," accepting the tissue, lightly wiping her eye corners. "I'm thinking, if your father and your grandmother have spirits in heaven, seeing today's scene, they'd definitely be very happy." She spoke while putting her arm around Tang Chao-er's shoulders, her heart surging with feelings only a mother has for a daughter. 2 days later, Murong Chu received an email from He Wei. Comrade Murong, hello! Thank you for your support at the last sociology annual meeting. The courage you demonstrated in this matter made me deeply admire you. I'm writing this email to bid you farewell. I've reached retirement age. In a few days, I'll leave this city, returning to He family village by the Yellow River that nurtured me. I'll live in the ancestral home my parents left behind. Diligent farming and rain reading, returning to simplicity and authenticity, this is the life ideal Chinese literati have longed for thousands of years. In this environment, distantly I can avoid academic circles' increasingly corrupt habits. Nearby, I can embrace simple rural soil. Internally, I can examine my own heart. Externally, I can observe social sentiment and public opinion. Why not? Regarding new phenomena appearing in rural areas in recent years, I feel deeply gratified. Regarding some new contradictions and problems exposed within, I'm equally full of worry. I'll write these reflections into the sequel to the transformation of He family village. Additionally, I want to emulate Yan Yangchu and Liang Shuming, opening a rural construction academy at He family village, making modest contributions to new rural construction. When the time comes, I'll definitely invite you to visit and guide. Oh yes, my graduate student Li Wanxia and I have married. This time she'll also return with me to He family village, together completing the sequel to the transformation of He family village. I wish you find your own happiness soon, old Ha X month and day. This old pedant's persistence moved Murong Chu's heart somewhat. Half a year ago, Murong Chu went to South Korea and Israel to lecture. Using this opportunity, she investigated South Korean family cooperative farms, especially Israel's kibbutzim, leaving deep impressions. In Hebrew, kibbutz means collective settlement point, also called people's communes or collective farms. First established in 1909, at that time Israel didn't yet exist as a nation. Some Jewish immigrants from Russia, Poland, and other countries came to the Middle East to carry out the Zionist movement. What they saw wasn't the place flowing with milk and honey described in the Bible, but barren land. They established some collectively owned independent farms at Degania in the Galilee Lake region of northern Palestine at that time. From then until now, this economic entity similar to people's communes has continued operating. In Israel, currently there are about 300 kibbutzim, population accounting for about 3% of the total national population. After returning to China this period, Murong Chu had been thinking about how Chinese rural areas could escape small-scale peasant production modes of individual households and the farmers' professional cooperatives flourishing in recent years. She increasingly firmly believed this was the necessary path for rural modernization. Murong Chu remembered, the night before leaving Shenhuangzhou, she'd had a long conversation with Ma La about new-type farmers' professional cooperatives. The topic's depth and breadth was incomparable to any academic forum or symposium. They had many commonalities:
of course equally many differences. What amazed Murong-Chu was that the shy, introverted youth in her memory saw problems so thoroughly, even surpassing many scholars specializing in 3 rural issues. Moreover, Ma La's concerns extended far beyond 3 rural issues, including all contemporary China's contradictions, dilemmas, and hopes. He had genuine insights, making Murong-Chu involuntarily recall that batch of late 19th century Russian Narodnik intellectuals. Sometimes she didn't know how to define Ma La's identity. Peasant? Intellectual? Man of letters? She again produced doubt. Was this person with resolute gaze, composed expression, body emanating earthen smell, really the youth Ma La in her memory? Murong-Chu felt utterly confused, but it was precisely this confusion that activated an impulse long dormant in her heart. She could no longer continue staying in the academic circles, reeking of decay. A notion suddenly popped into her head. Next semester, she'd take graduate students to Yanhei County, to Shenhuangzhou, back to that village where she'd once lived and labored, conducting a truly meaningful field investigation. Yes, that's it. The end.